Chapter 73. Feng Qi felt helpless in the face of Vivian's invitation. If he agreed, his future path of exploration would be narrowed. His starting point would be to join the Scarlet Institute. Therefore, from the perspective of the relationship between reality and the future, he definitely couldn't accept this invitation. Even if he agreed, it would have to be his future self who agreed. Joining the Scarlet Institute as a future line would be a way for him to spy on some useful information. As for the current line, before he had absolute influence and strength, it was better not to contact the Scarlet Institute. Therefore, he immediately shook his head and said, "Director Yu, I'm really sorry. After graduation, I plan to join the Tiger Soul Institute. After all, the Tiger Soul Institute is my best choice in terms of research. As for biological sciences, my knowledge is limited. I'm really not qualified." Vivian seemed to be mentally prepared for Feng Qi's rejection. She smiled and said, "Maybe you know too little about our Scarlet Institute. In fact, our Scarlet Institute also dabbles in martial arts. You can definitely research martial arts at our Scarlet Institute. But you're right. In terms of the foundation of martial arts, our Scarlet Institute can't be compared to the Tiger Soul Institute and other research institutes that focus on martial arts research. But I still hope that you can consider our Scarlet Institute. I think that with your talent, you can dabble in a wider range of fields. For example, this time's divine seed in the human body is a very novel concept in the field of martial arts research. If you come, we can give you more resources to carry out such research." Faced with Vivian's repeated invitations, he had a headache. He didn't know whether the Scarlet Institute was a good or bad thing. If it really was an evil force, maybe after some time, he would have to choose whether to betray humanity or not. If he didn't agree, he might have to go to the guillotine the next day. If he agreed, it would be even more dangerous. In order to ensure that he could be controlled, the Scarlet Institute would definitely use all kinds of methods to control him. He might even have to undergo body modification. Just thinking about it made him shudder. This choice could only be considered in the future line. He definitely couldn't agree to it in the present. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to raising the difficulty of his future timeline, and the road ahead would be difficult. However, he did not directly refuse. After all, there was still room for negotiation. "Let me think about it. It's too sudden. I haven't thought about it yet. I was too anxious. After discovering such a good seedling like you, I can't wait to start research on human evolution with you as soon as possible. If you have any ideas, you can contact me at any time. I will reserve an early admission quota for you for 1 year. Thank you. By the way, aren't you curious about what I'm going to do with your blood? Usually, when we want to obtain a blood sample from other geniuses, their reaction is usually to get to the bottom of the matter. What is the purpose of collecting the blood sample?" Vivian asked curiously. Feng Qi was speechless. "You old woman, can you even ask about this? What if I die because I know too much?" Thinking of this, he immediately shook his head. Every research institute has their own confidential information. If you want to talk about it, you will tell me. If you don't want to talk about it, it's pointless for me to ask. You're really different. All the geniuses I know have a strong desire to explore the unknown. It's rare to see someone like you. Vivian's charming smile appeared on her face. However, this research isn't really a secret. Although it's not public, it's fine to tell you. Actually, the Scarlet Institute has been researching a project. It's about how to replicate the talents of geniuses, or whether it's possible to create human geniuses in batches. Therefore, young and promising geniuses like you are the subjects of our research. It's just that this research hasn't made any progress so far. It's a pity. If there are results in this area, we can create geniuses in batches. The future of humanity will be bright." When he heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Create geniuses in batches? What a wild idea. However, before he knew the truth about the Scarlet Institute, he didn't dare to jump to conclusions. Perhaps the Scarlet Institute wasn't creating geniuses, but rather researching how to stifle the birth of geniuses. The Scarlet Institute's core research direction was biological science. If it really was an evil force, then they might be researching a biological virus to stifle the birth of human geniuses. He suddenly thought of the extinct smallpox virus. This virus used to only have humans as its hosts. Perhaps the Scarlet Institute was also researching a special virus that could only host a single species, thus stifling the growth potential of human beings. Just as his thoughts were running wild, Wei Wei looked at the time in the lower right corner of the video call. She then smiled and said, "I still have research projects to follow up on, so let's end the conversation here. If you have any ideas, feel free to contact me. The Scarlet Institute is looking forward to your joining." "Okay, Director Yu." After hanging up the video call, Feng Qi fell into deep thought. The Scarlet Institute's genetics department, towards Wei Wei, he had always maintained his vigilance. Other than the content of Mu Qing's memory, another important reason was that he wasn't sure if Vivian was trustworthy. If the Scarlet Institute was a cancer rooted in human civilization, then, as the director of the Scarlet Institute, Vivian must have joined the domain creatures and been used by them. Therefore, no matter what, it was best to be cautious. However, after talking with Vivian, he had another option in his future timeline. Vivian gave him a 1-year deadline to choose whether to join the Scarlet Institute or not. He could let himself join the Scarlet Institute in one of the future timelines and investigate the internal intelligence of the Scarlet Institute as an undercover. This way, even if he sacrificed himself, it wouldn't affect his future self's choice. Thinking of this, he suddenly sighed. The road to a better future seemed to be paved with his own corpses. It could be said that human civilization was advancing on his corpse. It could also be said that he used his own death time and time again to change the future, allowing human civilization to avoid disaster and advance in a better direction. He felt guilty for his future self from the bottom of his heart. However, if he had to sacrifice himself in this timeline, he would also make the choice without hesitation. The road to a better future was full of thorns, and it was bound to be accompanied by sacrifices. However, there were some things that surpassed death in his eyes. Thinking of this, the sadness in his heart swept away, and a smile appeared on his face. He looked at the time on the screen, took out his smartphone, and dialed Lin Rant's number. "Gone Fan. Got it." Chapter 74. Over the next few days, Feng Qi would go to cultivation method class 1 every day. In the first class, he proposed the concept of human seed god. Over the next few days, he began to perfect the concept and instill the theoretical knowledge into the students. Due to his special constitution, he couldn't cultivate, so over the next few days, he began to guide the students to cultivate using the method of human seed god. The knowledge brought back from the future was very complete, so he wasn't worried that the students would have problems during their cultivation. Since he did it, he wanted to amaze the world. The prize was important, but guiding the development of human civilization in the field of cultivation was more important. Introducing the concept of human seed god 400 years in advance was equivalent to saving human civilization 400 years of exploration in the field of cultivation organ research. The impact it would have would be far-reaching. Like the spread of the butterfly effect, a new cultivation knowledge and system would be born in the next 400 years of blank space. Maybe during this period, a super cultivation system that could change the fate of human civilization could be born. The future always disappointed him, but every time he entered the dream, he had hope for the future, because he understood that being depressed, disappointed, and giving up couldn't change the current situation. Only hard work, progress, and perseverance could create miracles. Under his guidance, over the next few days, many students completed the process of human seed god in their heart. The heart was the power source of the human body. It could also be called an engine, so the heart was the first choice for human seed god. After the success of human seed god, an extremely small crystal was born in their heart, followed by obvious changes in their body. Their heart beat stronger, and their physical fitness improved accordingly. The success of the human seed god concept caused a sensation in the entire Star City University. Currently, the hottest topic in Star City Academy was related to Feng Qi and his perfected human body seed spirit system. It even alarmed Bai Fuxing, who was leading the special training recruits. At this time, in the principal's office, Bai Fuxing was glaring at Feng Qi and angrily scolding, "You're too bold. You really think you could do whatever you want just because you're a genius? Believe it or not, I'll remove you from your position as a substitute teacher right now and make you my student." Looking at Bai Fuxing, who was wearing the special training instructor uniform, Feng Qi scratched his head and said awkwardly, "I'll be careful in the future. I'll definitely be careful in the future." "Grandmaster, please sit down. Don't be angry." Seeing him admit defeat, Bai Fuxing's expression softened. He sat down and continued, "You are very talented in the study of cultivation. I can't help but sigh in admiration. However, you have to understand that there can't be any mistakes in the content of the cultivation system. The cultivation methods that can enter the academy have all gone through layers of safety tests to ensure that there won't be any mistakes during cultivation. This time, the concept that you propose seems to have a perfect theory, but there may be all kinds of hidden dangers in it. If you don't handle it well, there may be problems. I won't allow you to use the students as test subjects anymore. Do you hear me?" Hearing this, he realized that he had indeed gone too far. He was sure that there were no problems with these cultivation methods, but Bai Fuxing did not know that. In his opinion, this kind of behavior was completely playing with fire. It was too risky. But then, doubts arose in his heart. "Grandmaster, didn't the ferocious tiger fist and other cultivation methods I taught not pass the certification test of the various major cultivation method research institutes? Why didn't you stop me from teaching these cultivation methods to the students?" Faced with the question, Bai Fuxing shook his head. "The situation is different. You taught the theory of the ferocious tiger fist and other cultivation methods, but no student would really try to cultivate them. They would only practice part of the knowledge. For example, when you taught the ferocious tiger fist, you proposed the concept of Xingyi. This concept played a role in perfecting the body cultivation system. The students would also learn the essence of the ferocious tiger fist and not really cultivate this cultivation method." After hearing Bai Fuxing's explanation, Feng Qi was even more puzzled. Then what if a curious student really tried to cultivate it? Even if a student secretly cultivated it, you wouldn't know, right? There was a problem in this area before. At that time, a student in the academy cultivated some *T tyrannical dragon cultivation method on the internet, causing his meridians to break, and he died. Since then, all the major academies have explicitly prohibited students from cultivating non-certified cultivation methods. Those who violate the rules will be expelled from the academy. Whether a cultivation method is certified or not, students will know by searching online in the cultivation method library. Hearing this, he could not help but continue to ask, what if there's a student who wants to cultivate in secret? In any case, as long as there are no problems, the academy won't find out, right? How could the academy not have considered this? Don't forget that the academy will conduct regular physical examinations of the students' physical conditions. During the physical examination, the strength of the student's blood vessels, the quality of spirit energy, the acupoints, meridians, and other aspects in the body have to be checked in detail. This is done to detect any hidden dangers that may occur when the students cultivate and to prevent potential problems. And different cultivation methods will have different states of spirit energy quality, acupoints, and meridians in the body. Whether or not a student has cultivated a non-certified cultivation method will be known after a check. Hearing this, he suddenly understood. This made sense because no student had really cultivated the cultivation method that he had taught. He had only recorded the theoretical content and extracted the essence from it. One was theory and the other was practice. This time, he had led the students to try to cultivate an uncertified cultivation system. In fact, he had violated the academy's rules. He suddenly understood why Bai Fuxing was so angry. Bai Fuxing had to bear a certain amount of pressure for him to be the substitute teacher of Star City University. After all, he did not have any qualifications. It was equivalent to Bai Fuxing vouching for him to teach in the academy. If he made a major mistake in teaching, Bai Fuxing would definitely not be able to avoid responsibility. Moreover, he was the president of Star City University. He would definitely be severely punished. Grandmaster, I was wrong. I will be more careful in the future. It's good that you understand. It's good to have innovative ideas, but you must have a sense of propriety. If you continue to be so willful, your grandmaster will have to go to jail. If the situation is serious, I might even be executed." Feng Qi was speechless. "By the way, I forgot to tell you. I have already reported the tiger fist and other cultivation methods that you taught to the students to a few cultivation method research institutes. They're now conducting tests. If they pass the tests, they can be recorded in the cultivation method library. If these cultivation methods pass the tests, will there be a reward?" he asked with slight anticipation. "There will be various honors and special prizes that can't be bought with a reward. You will also be recorded in history. So you don't have money?" Bai Fuxing was speechless. Looking at Feng Qi's regretful face, he suddenly wanted to go up and give him a special training punch. Why was he thinking about money all the time at such a young age? Wasn't it better to fight for the rise of mankind? Chapter 75. Star City University Cafeteria. The Ganfan trio gathered at the northern corner of the dining table. They were eating their lunch in big mouthfuls, looking very satisfied. Even Lin Ran was influenced by the food. He felt that eating in small mouthfuls was not a Ganfan. He had to eat in big mouthfuls to be satisfied. However, with his appetite, he would not be able to eat for long. He no longer had the energy to eat. At this moment, Feng Qi was eating the oyster with garlic on his plate and the tomahawk steak in his left hand. Fortunately, it was free food. Otherwise, he felt that he would not be able to feed himself if he ate like this every day. Thinking of this, he looked up at Mu Qing. Compared to Mu Qing, his appetite was not even enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. They were not on the same level at all. If he really had to spend money to eat, Mu Qing's situation would be worse than his. "Senior, I think that after graduation, the money you earn from joining the domain battle group should be used to buy food. Maybe it's not enough. You'll have to borrow from us." Mu Qing, who was eating with her cheeks puffed up, suddenly stopped. She looked like she was in deep thought. Then, a trace of worry appeared between her eyebrows. However, she quickly lowered her head and continued eating. "We can eat today. Who cares if he's hungry tomorrow?" Lin Ren looked up and laughed. "That's true. Ganfan," Feng Qi said. He lowered his head and continued eating. After half an hour of lunch, Feng Qi and Lin Ran were already full. They bade farewell to Mu Qing, who was still eating, and walked towards the school field. It was already noon. The freshmen who had finished their lunch were resting on the field. The freshmen from the different classes sat in a circle, listening to the instructor's lecture. Among the 11 freshmen, other than the monk and Lu Yu, who had a mysterious background, he only knew what the other 9 looked like. He did not know them in detail. Among the other 9 people, Xia Long, Xia Hu, and Xia Bao were the 3 brothers from the Beast Rail battle group. They were all tall and muscular, and their performance during the special training was very outstanding. It was obvious that they had practiced a body cultivation technique in advance. Jia Yi from the 8 Trigrams Glyph Array Research Institute was a very bookish boy. During the special training, he always had a smile on his face, giving people a very sunny feeling. According to the email he left behind in the future, it was recorded that Jia Yi had snuck into the Scarlet Institute and continuously passed important information to the organization. He was a good seedling that was worth nurturing. Of course, the premise was that he was not a werewolf. Yang Xiaoxin and Kaiguo were both girls. They came from Star City's military department and the Medical Research Institute, respectively. They had strong backgrounds, but they also worked very hard during the special training. Lu Ping, from the Science and Technology Research Institute, looked very ordinary. He was the kind of person who wouldn't stand out in a crowd. As for why Lu Ping chose to study at Star City University, despite having a background in the Research Institute of Science and Technology, instead of a research institute like the Institute of Science and Technology or the Institute of the Future, he didn't find it strange. After all, the parent's choice did not necessarily have to be the child's choice. It was normal for children to have their own hobbies and ideas and make their own choices. For example, Mo Fei. His parents were both cultivators, but he had been interested in mechanical science since he was young and was determined to become a great inventor. Finally, Su Hongyun was a chubby little fatty. He was always tired out during the training, but his willpower was not bad. Even if he was tired and sweaty, he could still grit his teeth and persevere. His background was very special. He came from the Sky Smasher group, and the family behind him was very rich. The Sky Smasher group was also one of the 3 major sponsors of Star City University. Through Bai Fuxing, he learned that a part of the school's annual expenses for the cafeteria was sponsored by the Sky Smasher group. They were definitely the descendants of capitalists. For the past few days, Feng Qi had been coming to the field every day. He judged the characteristics of the students through their performance during the special training. He was looking for potential werewolves, but so far, he hadn't found anything. Every freshman's performance was very good. "Brother Qi, there's a good show to watch." At this moment, Lin Ran interrupted his thoughts. Looking up, he saw the freshmen from each special training class sitting together under the guidance of the instructors, forming a large circle. Bai Fuxing, who was standing in the center of the circle, looked around and smiled. "Let's have something to show today. I'm sure that many of the freshmen in this year's batch have already been exposed to cultivation methods other than gymnastics. Now, I'll give you a platform to perform. Let's have a special training competition. Each class will choose a representative. The class that wins can rest in the afternoon." Hearing Bai Fuxing's words, many of the freshmen's faces lit up with excitement. They were all elites from different schools and had absolute confidence in their own strength. They all wanted to take this opportunity to perform so that they could receive some special treatment in the future of the school. "I'll give you 30 minutes to choose your representative. All classes are temporarily dismissed." Hearing Bai Fuxing's order, the instructors of each class led their students away. Then, they sat together and began to discuss who would represent their class in the competition. In a situation where no one was willing to give in to another, each class took the lead and began to fight among themselves. During this time, Lu Yu's performance once again attracted his attention. At this time, he was wearing a black special training uniform. His long hair was tied up behind his head, and he carried a simple long sword on his back. He had the temperament of an ancient swordsman. His combat skills were very strong. He could always use the simplest method to defeat his opponents. After defeating a few of his classmates, Lu Yu became the representative of his class. Feng Qi didn't know much about Lu Yu. However, in the email message he left behind in the future, Lu Yu was the one with the strongest combat strength in the class he was teaching. Therefore, the mission of protecting the human geniuses was carried out by Lu Yu. The news of a secret organization secretly protecting the human geniuses was also sent back by Lu Yu during his mission. Another person who attracted his attention was Tyrant. Although Tyrant seemed unreliable, his combat strength was not weak. However, his combat style was somewhat festive. His head was his weapon, and he could defend and attack at the same time. However, Tyrant's combat skills were too rusty. In the end, he was caught by another freshman in his class and was defeated. Among them, Xia Long, Xia Hu, and Xia Bao's fighting style could be said to be extremely valiant. Before the fight began, they would strip off their clothes, revealing their well-built muscles. Their fighting moves were wide open and abnormally ferocious, causing people to be intimidated by them. In the end, Xia Long became the representative of their special training class. As for the other 7 freshmen, their combat strength was not outstanding. This was especially true for the little fatty Su Hongyun, who was the descendant of a capitalist. He didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the class challenge. He could only sit quietly in the outer circle and excitedly clap for his classmates from time to time. He was like a backdrop. While waiting, Bai Fuxing's shout rang out, and the class representative competition officially began. Feng Qi was looking forward to Lu Yu and Xia Long's performance. Chapter 76. On the field, all the freshmen of the 23rd batch sat in a large circle. The freshman representatives stood in the center and listened to Bai Fuxing talk about the rules of this confrontation. For example, they couldn't use weapons, couldn't attack vital parts of the body, couldn't use spells, and so on. Feng Qi could understand the meaning of the rules. After all, they weren't fighting against a domain creature. Attacking without rules could cause damage to the freshmen's bodies. In serious cases, they could even be paralyzed. This was also a problem that all the major academies had a headache about: how to ensure the safety of the students during training. Ordinary confrontation training didn't have much meaning for actual combat. During the battle, they would definitely be restrained and unable to attack freely. After all, they weren't fighting against a domain creature, but their classmates. If they weren't careful, they could cause irreparable damage to the other party and leave behind sequelae. Other than the chilly winter academy, which allowed students of the same batch to fight at will, the other academies generally adopted the practice of letting the students go through systematic training before being led by professional teams to the domain for actual combat training. Even so, there were still many freshmen who were seriously injured in actual combat training every year, and some even died in the domain. Therefore, improving the students' actual combat ability while ensuring their safety was always a problem that couldn't be solved perfectly. This made Feng Qi think of the game's savior that could change the current situation. According to the data description of the future database, this game could perfectly simulate the physical performance of reality and record all the spell trajectories at that time. It allowed players to cast spells in the game almost no difference from reality. The physical performance of spells was also no different from reality. After the birth of the epic-making game Savior, the major academies and civil groups' actual combat training problems were solved. In the future, human society entered a new stage of powerhouses. Looking at by Fuxing, who was still talking about the confrontation rules, he was even more eager to create the game's savior. However, before he obtained the infinite memory function, he couldn't copy the huge data code of Savior at all. This idea could only be thought about for the time being. The only thing he could do now was to let the physics engine of Savior be born in advance. He had already made plans in this regard. He just needed to wait for the right time to find the genius Fangzhou in the virtual engine field. The rules are like this. Now, the confrontation begins. At this moment, Fuxing finished explaining the rules of the confrontation and stepped away from the center of the field. The first match was between the representatives of Special Training Class 1 and Special Training Class 2. Along with the instructor-referee's shout, the battle was about to begin. Watching the fight, Lin Ran, who was sitting at the side, yawned. "It's too boring. If you fight in our chilly winter academy with such a restrained way of fighting, you'll probably be beaten to the point that even your mother won't recognize you." Feng Qi was speechless. "Have you ever been beaten up in chilly winter academy? I was beaten up by my seniors on the first day of school. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Fortunately, they didn't go too far and didn't kill me. I haven't been beaten up since then." "Why?" He could not help but ask curiously. The teaching environment of Chilly Winter Academy is similar to the law of the jungle. It emphasizes the survival of the fittest. The competition is very cruel, but it is not completely without restrictions. For example, the competition is only allowed between students of the same class. Senior students are not allowed to bully new students except on the day of freshman enrollment. Also, no deaths are allowed during the fight, etc. And I've always been the strongest among my peers. Even the senior students are no match for me. Who can beat me?" Lin Ran said with a bright smile on his face. Feng Qi was speechless as he looked at Lin Ran, who was gradually becoming arrogant. He looked at the field. The first match ended in less than 10 minutes. Then, the representatives of Special Training Class 3 and Special Training Class 4 went on the field. Lu Yu was the representative of Special Training Class 3. His opponent was a tall girl who was looking at him with a smile. When the instructor-referee shouted, "Start," the girl took the lead. Her figure suddenly closed in on Lu Yu, and her right leg went straight for Lu Yu's face. At this time, Lu Yu also moved. His movement was very fast. His right leg swept toward the girl's left leg. This kick made the girl lose her balance, and she fell to the ground. As if she was unwilling to lose, the girl jumped up and took a step forward to attack Lu Yu again. However, before she could get close, Lu Yu's right leg kicked her lower abdomen, and she fell to the ground again. Looking at Lu Yu's calm expression, Lin Ran clicked his tongue in amazement. Fast, ruthless, accurate. This guy must have a lot of combat experience. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to make such accurate combat predictions with just training. Could it be that he's from a domain battle group? After hearing Lin Ran's words, Fengqi was even more curious about the path to heaven that Liu Yu mentioned. He decided that the next time he entered the dream, he would look for information related to the path to heaven. Liu Yu's battle only took 1 minute to end. The competition continued. Because this competition was purely for entertainment, the freshmen were not allowed to use spells or amplification techniques. Thus, Lin Ran and Fengqi felt that the battle was very boring. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to see Xiaolong's performance, he would have left long ago. After waiting for a while, Xiaolong finally appeared. He was about 1.9 meters tall. After entering the arena, he took off his clothes and revealed his sturdy muscles. Just by standing there, he gave off an oppressive feeling. When the referee shouted, "Begin!" the freshman standing not far from Xiaolong attacked first. However, Xiaolong didn't move. He just stood there as if he had no intention of dodging. His opponent's fist landed on his chest. Not only did he not receive any damage, but an earthen yellow light circulated around his body. On the contrary, the student who attacked was forced to take a few steps back. Unwilling to give up, he charged at Xiaolong again. However, Xiaolong still didn't choose to fight back. He allowed his opponent's fist to land on his body. When he saw this, Fengqi was shocked. The competition clearly prohibited the use of spells and combat techniques. However, the referee didn't appear to stop the competition. This could only mean one thing. The earthen yellow energy circulating around Xiaolong's body wasn't a combat technique. It was a protective qi shield formed when one's physical skills reached a certain level. TSK, this Xiaolong is too fierce. He's cultivated a protective qi shield at such a young age. He's an excellent seedling for physical cultivation. Lin Ran also exclaimed at this moment. Then, he turned to look at Fengqi. "Brother Qi, this guy is probably the strongest in our class aside from me." Fengqi, he looked at Lin Ran, who said this with a straight face. He really wanted to ask who gave him the courage to say this. Apart from Xiaolong, he didn't know who was stronger between Liu Yu and Lin Ran. However, if Mu Qing punched him, Lin Ran would have to stay in the ICU for at least half a month. If he didn't make it, he would have to delete his account and start all over again. Chapter 77. Xiaolong's battle with his opponent was one-sided. He didn't attack from the beginning to the end, but his opponent couldn't break through his defense no matter how hard he tried. In the end, his opponent chose to give up in frustration. The next few battles made Fengqi and Lin Ran doze off. It wasn't that the freshmen were weak, but because of the rules, the freshmen couldn't unleash their full potential. In this kind of close combat, physical cultivators had an innate advantage. Students who were more inclined towards spells couldn't unleash their full potential. He didn't choose to leave because he was looking forward to Xiaolong and Liu Yu's encounter. These two were good seedlings. As long as they weren't werewolves, they were worth nurturing. In the future, he would definitely form a domain battle team. After all, with the information in the future database, he would have many secret manuals for clearing domains. At the same time, there were various resources in the domain that he needed to enter the dream world and form an organization. In the future, creating Savior would require a large amount of money, such as art design, virtual engine development, and so on. The source of funds for this would depend on the domain. In order to form a domain battle team, the most important thing was the strong. Therefore, he paid close attention to Liu Yu and Xiaolong's performance. While waiting, Xiaolong and Liu Yu walked to the center of the field. Seeing this, Fengqi was finally energized. He turned to look at Lin Ran and asked, "Who do you think will win?" Liu Yu always carried a sword on his back. This means that his strength is in swordsmanship. If swords were allowed, it would be hard to tell who would win. However, the rules say that swords aren't allowed, so I think Xiaolong will win. Hearing Lin Ran's answer, a smile appeared on his face. "Then shall we make a bet? You bet that Xiaolong will win, and I bet that Liu Yu will win. You seem to think highly of Liu Yu. What's the bet?" Lin Ran asked curiously. "If I win, you have to promise me that you will give up on martial arts research and focus on spells research." Lin Ran, isn't this gamble a bit too big? It's practically gambling with the dreams of the rest of my life. If I don't gamble, Even if your wager is to personally guide me in learning cultivation techniques and knowledge, I still won't agree. Lin ran decisively. He shook his head to express his refusal. Take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle, Feng Qi said patiently. No, I'm afraid I'll lose my bike. Lin Ran couldn't help but roll his eyes. When he realized that Lin Ran was not fooled, he felt helpless. He then turned his gaze to the center of the field. At this moment, Lu Yu and Xiao Long were already standing in the middle of the field, sizing each other up. After the instructor referee shouted, "Start!" neither of them made the first move. Instead, they started chatting. Brother, I've watched a few of your matches and realized that you've never used your full strength. You're carrying a sword on your back, so your strongest move should be a sword technique. I won't bully you. I'll allow you to use a sword in this match. It won't be unsheathed against its own kind, Lu Yu replied expressionlessly in the face of Xiao Long's provocation. What's it called? Xiao Long asked curiously. Jianlan, good name. A sword is a lethal weapon, and a sword technique is a killing technique. No matter how fancy the name is, it's still a fact. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the name is nice or not. Then why don't you name it Tai Dao? It's not important anyway, Xiao Long said with a grin. Lu Yu, come on, let me see your strength. I allow you to use a sword at any time. At this moment, the instructor referee, standing at the side, couldn't help but speak. Are you done chatting? What do you mean by you allow it? Who do you think you are? Did I allow it? Don't you understand that you can't use weapons? Xiao Long. Xiao Long took a deep breath and got into a fighting stance. As he exerted all his strength, a layer of earthy yellow energy appeared on the surface of his body. Attack! In the face of Xiao Long's provocation, Lu Yu didn't hesitate. He immediately took a step forward and poked Xiao Long's chest with his index finger. For some reason, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the field. The quaint longsword on Lu Yu's back trembled and buzzed. When his finger touched Xiao Long's chest, the grinning Xiao Long's face instantly froze. His face turned red and finally purple. He took a few steps back before he could stabilize himself. He lowered his head and saw a red finger mark on his chest. A wave of energy spread through the red mark, and he couldn't help but grimace in pain. What's this? Xiao Long, who was horrified, immediately looked at Lu Yu and asked, Sword intent. What's that? Xiao Long, who didn't understand, asked again with a puzzled expression. It's a type of force. If you're talented, you'll come into contact with it one day. My force is sword force. This is also the reason why I always carry Jianlan on my back. It's an extension of my strength, and it's with me every day. I don't really understand, but it sounds very powerful. I've lost. Although Xiao Long hadn't used any combat techniques, he didn't persist in the face of Lu Yu, who had broken through his protective qi barrier with just one move. He admitted defeat. However, before leaving the field, Xiao Long couldn't help but look at Lu Yu and ask, Can you let me feel your sword intent again? Hearing this, Lu Yu nodded and pointed at Xiao Long suddenly. A gust of wind blew, and the quaint longsword on his back trembled and buzzed. The biting cold sword intent turned into an invisible wave and swept towards Xiao Long. Xiao Long, who was standing in his original position, felt a stinging pain on his body. He couldn't help but grimace. So powerful. I don't blame you for losing, but I didn't use my full strength. I hope we'll have another chance to fight again. When that time comes, we'll go all out. Okay. Lu Yu didn't refuse and nodded in agreement. After the two left the field, Feng Qi turned to look at Lin Ran beside him. What is the sure that Lu Yu mentioned? Do you know anything about it? I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. It's said that it's a kind of physical force field. The conditions to cultivate sure are very harsh. It requires a firm belief and strong willpower. In short, it's a very metaphysical power system. However, because the cultivation process is very difficult and can easily cause a mental breakdown, ordinary people can't even come into contact with the cultivation method of sure. I've only heard about it from my teacher. Can you find a cultivation method of sure on the internet? He continued to ask. Of course you can't find it. Cultivation methods with major hidden dangers are all blocked because there are always idiots who think they're geniuses who cultivate them and then lose their lives. Many of the restrictions that seem to be silently adhering to old rules are actually the result of lessons learned from time to time. Lin Ran shook his head and explained. Brother Qi, why are you so interested in Sure? The cultivation of Sure generally requires a weapon. You don't have a weapon? Who says I don't have a weapon? What about your weapon? Lin Ran asked with a puzzled expression. In the dream, it's super awesome. Lin Ran? Chapter 78. There was no suspense in the final result of the special training competition. In the end, Liu Yu won by a landslide. After watching the special training competition, Feng Qi said goodbye to Lin Ran and returned to his dormitory. Sitting in front of his desk, he opened a shopping website and placed an order for a rune crystal of the advanced wolf. After the order was made, he checked his bank balance. The rest of his savings didn't allow him to buy any more rune crystals of the advanced wolf. But he wasn't worried. The Tiger Soul concept competition in a few days would bring him 8 million, which was enough for him to enter the future dream 8 times. After closing the shopping website, he opened his laptop and began to plan for the future. With a detailed plan, he wouldn't be like a headless fly when he entered the future dream and waste precious time. This time, Vivian from the Scarlet Institute invited him to join the Scarlet Institute. Now, he had one more option for the future in front of him. He had 3 options that he was optimistic about. The first option was to join the Scarlet Institute and investigate the secrets of the Scarlet Institute as an undercover agent to determine whether the Scarlet Institute was good or bad. But this option also had potential risks. The so-called risks weren't related to personal safety, but to the benefits he could reap. After he entered the future dream, he would lose the ability to enter the future dream in this timeline. Even if he joined the Scarlet Institute, it would be difficult for him to make any breakthroughs in research. Without any research results, he wouldn't be promoted, and the chances of him getting in touch with the core secrets of the Scarlet Institute would also be reduced. He might even get nothing. The second option was to stay low and witness the many changes in the future with his own eyes. For example, Mu Qing formed the Dawn Rebels. Lin Ran developed techniques and learned the historical truth that couldn't be found in the database. But there were also many risks in this future timeline. In the future, he would die for various reasons. It was completely unknown whether he could live long or not. Maybe he would die young again. Not only would he not get any information, but he would also waste an opportunity to enter the future dream. The third option was to continue to form a dark force and find the hidden werewolves among the students. This lead was also the most stable one. As long as they provided different information and paid close attention, they would definitely be able to find the werewolf hiding among the students. From there, they would be able to find the mysterious organization behind him or her. He was in a dilemma as to what to do. At the end of the day, it was all because he didn't have enough money. If he had the money, he would naturally take all of them. He wouldn't need to struggle over which to choose. After pondering for a moment, he made a decision. This time, he chose the third, most stable future line. The spies among the students were like a fishbone stuck in one's throat. Being able to find them earlier would be beneficial to the timeline. At the same time, this timeline would also allow him to follow the clues to find the secret organization hidden in the dark. Next, he began to plan what he needed to do after entering the future dream. The first thing he had to do was to check the information of the characters in the database 3 times to understand their future. As for whose information he wanted to check, he made a decision after thinking for a moment. It was himself, Mu Qing, and Liu Yu. Next was the only chance a visitor had to check out the cultivation method. Naturally, he couldn't waste it. As he pondered, a lot of content appeared in the notebook. 1. Search for information related to the heavenly path and understand the details. 2. Search for Mu Qing's body that was hidden in the Star City Sanctuary. This information may be affected by the butterfly effect. The location may have changed. Need to check the database again. 3. Hunt down domain creatures and obtain the ability of the prefix title. Increase your strength. Strength is always the guarantee of safety. 4. Find a suction cup and equip it with weapons. The location of the suction cup may change under the influence of the butterfly effect. You may not be able to find it. Need to act according to the situation. 5. If there is time, continue to head east. Explore what is in the east of the future dream. Need the narration to constantly remind you. 6. Search for information related to Xiao He through the database. Understand the truth of why she was being hunted. Perhaps under the influence of the butterfly effect, there is already a detailed description of Xiao He in the database. But don't expect too much. 7. Find out when the suction cup was first discovered. Determine if she is related to Mu Qing. 8. Looking at the more than 20 plans in the notebook, he felt a headache coming on. In fact, he could continue to list the plans. For example, search for information related to the domain field, learn the theory of cultivation techniques, understand the information in the domain creature illustration library, etc. But the time he could enter the future dream was limited. If he carried out the plan according to the plan, he may be killed by Xiao He halfway through. So he crossed out a few more plans in the notebook to shorten the time needed for the whole plan. While thinking, he scribbled on the notebook and made the plan more perfect. Finally, he began to think about a very important question. If it was inevitable that he would die young, then who should he entrust his personal mailbox to and let them continue to leave messages for him to investigate useful information? The first person he thought of was Mu Qing. If Mu Qing could record the contents of the mailbox, he would be able to know the reason why she formed the Dawn Rebels and why she chose to massacre the city. But after thinking about it carefully, he shook his head. When she recruited a large number of scavengers and formed the Dawn Rebels, Mu Qing's personality changed greatly. There was a chance that she was secretly controlled. If he told Mu Qing his personal mailbox, there was a hidden danger of being exposed. When the secret of the mailbox was discovered by the evil forces hiding in human civilization, then they would definitely use the mailbox to send him misleading information and make him make the wrong decision. Before he knew whether Mu Qing was controlled by the evil forces, he couldn't risk giving the mailbox to Mu Qing. While thinking, he came up with the best choice. He was the good brother of his former deskmate, best friend, and roommate, Mo Fei. After 6 years of being together, he knew very well whether Mo Fei could be trusted or not. Also, he checked Mo Fei's data in the future database and knew that he had a very long lifespan. At the same time, he was also a senior researcher in the Research Institute, Viper Branch. This identity gave him a lot of convenience in investigating information. In one of the timelines, the invisible reconnaissance robot he used to investigate the Scarlet Institute was provided by Mo Fei. After completing the plan, he closed the notebook. He would enter the future dream again after the delivery tomorrow. Chapter 79. After midnight tonight, it will be officially published. I'm so nervous. Before writing this book, I went through 3 months of design. During that time, I was filled with uncertainty, constantly looking for editors to look at the first draft, looking for author friends to look at the first draft. Then at the end of May, it was published on August 1st, and it took about half a year to publish. Now it's finally time to test the results. Just like when the college entrance exam results were released, the decisive moment had arrived. Here, I implore readers to support the original reading. The follow-up content of this book is definitely worthy of your support. It's all carefully prepared content. Then, let's talk about the updates. This book is a plot, so a lot of content needs to be written in detail. It's inevitable that the updates won't be fast, so I hope readers can understand. Tentatively, I'll update 4,000 to 6,000 words a day. After midnight, it'll be 16,000 words. Let's talk about the results of this book. Actually, I don't know how it will be. Right now, there are more than 20,000 fans, so according to one calculation, the first subscription should be around 2,000. I can only work hard in the future. In short, no matter what, let's go for a good result. Yesterday, I bragged in the author group, saying that after the timeline was published, the subscriptions would soon exceed 10,000. I don't know where my confidence came from. My bragging can only be realized by you guys. First, I'll reserve everyone's guaranteed monthly tickets. Finally, I'd like to thank readers for their support of this book. Editor Peng Lai has been helping me all this time. Thank you. The following is the reward thank you list. Thank you to Black and White Ming, Alliance Master for the reward. Thank you for stunning my time, Guild Master bestowing gifts, added chapters. Thank you to Meng Yishue for the reward. Thank you to Moonfall Snow, Abyss Frost Song for the reward. Thank you to Winter's Warm Sun Yo for the reward. Thank you to New Undead Body for the reward. Thank you to Blue City South for the reward. Thank you to Goose Ha 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 for the reward. Thank you to Wine God Sage for the reward. Thank you to Full Moon Flower for the reward. Thank you to Super E for the reward. Thank you to Hardworking Otaku for the reward. Thank you to Wind Cleansing for the reward. Thank you to Tail 9633 for the reward. Thank you to Cthulhu 24 for the reward. Thank you to Immortal Clan for the reward. Thank you to Find Ali's Braised Egg for the reward. Thank you to Huang Tian Emperor's Son. Thanks for the 1,500 points that I really want to raise a cat. Thank you for the 1,500 points tipped by Kongxing Shangqin. Thanks for the 1,500 points tipped by families with difficulty in naming. Thanks to Banksy Wei Yong for the 1,500 points. Thanks to the Book Addict for the 1,500 points. Thanks to Xiao Yao for the 888 points. A thank you is a thank you gift of 788 points. Thanks to Shuni Han for the 500 points. Thanks to Yao Yao Zero Omo for the 500 points tipped. Thanks to the 500 points tipped by Wanja and New Traveler. Thanks to the 500 point tip ending with 0262. Thank you for the 500 point from the Daily Reflection on My Health. Thanks to Commuter King for the 500 points. Thanks to the 500 points tipped by W March. Thanks to Wind in the Woods for the 500 points tipped. Thanks to Husky Funny for the 500 points. Thanks for the 500 point tip ending with 7357. Thanks to Immo Shursan Sheng for the 500 points. Thank you for the 500 points from Hamo. Thanks to a nameless piece of trash for 500 points. Thanks to the 500 points tipped by the Little Bookworm. Thanks to Kim Tae-san for the 500 points. Thanks to the 500 points from the King Level Dirty Bastard. Thank you to the Palace Master of the Purple Cloud Palace for the 500 points. Thanks for the 400 point tip ending with 4336. Thanks to the 400 points from Blowing the Wind. Thanks to me for the 400 point from you 3,000 times. Thanks to the 400 point from the South. Thanks to the 400 points from Yauka. Thanks to the 300 points from Poke Wound. Thanks to the 300 points from Poke number 5554. Thanks to the 300 point from the World. Thanks to the 300 point from Regret has become the norm. Thanks to the 300 points from E-Board. Thanks to the 300 points from Shanghai Love Letter. Thanks to the 300 points from Bumpy Road. Thanks to the 300 points from MO when Xion. Thanks to the 257 points from Star and Lamp. Thanks to the 244 points from Lonely Me. Thanks to the 200 point from Joxia. Thanks to the 200 points from Fantasy Shangli. Thanks to the 200 points from 1523. Thanks to the 200 point from Star. Thanks to the 200 points from Deposit Drop. Thanks to the 200 points from the World. Thanks to the 200 points from Hongmeng Position. Thanks to the 200 points from Spring Breeze After the Rain. Thanks to the 200 points from Night Sky. Thanks to the 200 points from Uranium Heavy Thunder. Thanks to the 200 points from Chow OM. Thanks to the 200 points from Your Freedom. Thanks to the 200 points from Hongmeng Position. Thanks to the 176 points from Poke number 6676. Thanks to the 112 points from Little Orange Super Cute. Thanks to the 100 points from Who Left Waiting. Thanks to the 100 points from Tea Tree. Thanks to the 100 points from Hugh Grant. Thanks to the 100 points from Ghost Vanishing Heart. Thanks to the 100 points from Lu Zizi Wuxin. Thanks to the 100 points from Lonling Xiao Xiao Shang 2587. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke number 3080. Thanks to the 100 points from Ija Tianla. Thanks to the 100 points from Creation God. Thanks to the 100 points from Read 3 Poems. Thanks to the 100 point from People Can Be Made Not Known. Thanks to the 100 points from Snowflakes Floating 987. Thanks to the 100 points from People Don't Know Where. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke Wound. Thanks to the 100 points from Drizzle Melting Snow. Thanks to the 100 points from The Final Alchemist. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke Wound. Thanks to the 100 points from Funeral Floating. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke number 3314. Thanks to the 100 points from Xiao Xiao Loline. Thanks to the 100 points from Index 163. Thanks to the 100 points from Strange Wind and Moon. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke number 3803. Thanks to the 100 points from Lonely Fox. Thanks to the 100 points from Stay 12. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke Number 0370, thanks to the 100 points from Poke. Number 2697, thanks to the 100 points from Little Ant. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke. Number 6020, thanks to the 100 points from Reed 3 Heads. Thanks to the 100 points from Akutagawa. Thanks to the 100 points from Kai Wushuang Mowing. Thanks to the 100 points from DEFS. Thanks to the 100 points from Cow. Thanks to the 100 points from Emotional Waves. Thanks to the 100 points from Miracle is just another name for hard work. Thanks to the 100 points from Ching. Xian Daoist. Thanks to the 100 points from Black Yao. Thanks to the 100 points from Poke. Number 7895. Thanks to the 100 points from Hong. Thanks to the 100 points from Ing Nual Words. Thanks to the 100 points from Wanjia New Traveler. Thanks to the 100 points from Crazy Fly Swatter. Thanks to the 100 points from Yun Tianxing. Thanks to the 100 points from Magic Modification Cloud. Thanks to the 100 points from Christian Hao. Thanks to the 100 points from Falling Dust. Thanks to the 100 points from Shiv. Dreamlike Illusion. Thanks to the 100 points from Smile. If there's anything missing, I'm really sorry. It took me more than an hour to sort everything out in one go. My eyes are getting blurry. Finally, I'd like to thank all the readers and bow. It's because of your support that this book can go further. There's nothing I can do to thank you. I can only write. Finally, I'd like to ask for monthly votes. I'd like to ask for guaranteed monthly votes after midnight. The author is responsible for bragging. The reader is responsible for fulfilling his dreams. Chapter 80. The blood moon hung high in the sky as the chilly wind howled. The ground was littered with skeletons that stretched for miles and piled up into a mountain. Looking at the dead future world, Feng Qi couldn't help but sigh. Everything here was the same as before. Perhaps history had undergone drastic changes, but human civilization still couldn't escape the fate of being shrouded by the domain. While he was lamenting, Littlekin slowly stood up from the ground and performed a split on the spot. Feng Qi was speechless. You've been here so many times. Why are you still disabled? Looking at Little Can, he was slightly speechless. Then, he took a step forward and kicked Little Can's head a few meters away. After adjusting his state of mind, he smiled and said, "Narrator, I came back to see you after buying the oranges. I was woken up by a stench in my sleep. As expected, you're here again. I'm forced to open for business again." Feng Qi was speechless. "Go back to sleep. I'll find you if I need anything." After saying goodbye to the narrator, he walked towards the east. Every time he entered the future dream, it was always important to check the database of the underground shelter. The zombies and undead worms that he encountered along the way were no longer a threat to him, so his exploration was very smooth. This time, the terrain in the future dream changed again. After spending more than half an hour exploring, he finally found the black metal tablet above the Star City Sanctuary. Standing in front of the tablet, he bit his finger and dripped a few drops of stinky black blood into the blood trough. After waiting for a while, an electronic voice sounded, and the black tablet moved to the right, revealing the metal tunnel that led to the shelter. Before entering the metal tunnel, he tried to pull the black metal tablet that was made of an unknown material, trying to seal the entrance. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, the metal tablet wouldn't budge. Don't waste your energy. Maybe you can collect some bones and branches and cover the entrance of the metal tunnel. That way, Xiaohei won't be able to see the entrance. Hearing the narrator's reminder, he was stunned. Will that work? Of course it's useless. Xiaohei is tracking you like he's on autopilot. Don't you know what's going on? You even covered the entrance? Why don't you cover yourself and see if Little Black can find you? Feng Qi was speechless. Suppressing the thought of challenging the narrator, he stepped into the metal tunnel. Along the way, the lights above the passage lit up one by one, illuminating the way forward. He still couldn't figure out how this abandoned underground shelter could still maintain its power system when no one was in charge. However, he was only curious about this and had no intention of finding out the truth. After all, there were more important things waiting for him to do. This time, the underground plaza in the future dream was much wider, and the number of iron gates around the plaza had also increased. The only thing that remained the same was the database and control panel placed in the center of the plaza. He came to the control panel of the database, wiped away the thick layer of dust, and pressed the red start button. Suddenly, the screen in front of him lit up, and a string of characters flashed past. A few seconds later, a list of options appeared in front of him. Star City Historical Database, Territory Creature Database, Real-Time Update, External Situation Detection, Surveillance, Patrol Drones, Satellite, Administrative Authority Required, Remaining Supplies in the Shelter, Physical Condition of Shelter Residents, Cultivation Technique Information. Looking at the list of options, he first opened the search bar and entered his name. After a few seconds, detailed information appeared. Feng Qi, human trader. Age, 26. Cause of death, Star City's first execution ground. Public execution date of death, May 17, 2031. Lifetime achievements. Honor Star City University S-Class Outstanding Graduate, cancelled. A-Class Elite Human Medal, cancelled. Outstanding Contribution to Human Development Award, cancelled. Research results. Gymnastics Training Version 2.0, Tiger Fist, Body Tempering Technique, Heaven and Earth Meditation, Soul Capture, Creator of the Human Spirit. Concept, Participant of the Cultivation System Version 3.76 Update. Comment. In the early days, Feng Qi was the pride of the world in everyone's eyes. He had a talent for cultivation that was difficult for others to reach. He was even regarded as the star of the era who was most likely to create a new cultivation system. No matter how dazzling the geniuses of the same era were, they were all overshadowed by him. However, after the age of 18, not only did Feng Qi's talent not develop further, instead, he entered a period of dormancy from the state of constantly creating new cultivation methods. It was also during this period that Feng Qi completely changed. During this period, he roped in students and personally formed the Breaking Dawn organization that brought disaster to the world. He also carried out a series of secret operations to stop the development of human civilization. Fortunately, he was discovered in time. On May 17, 2031, he was publicly executed at Star City's first execution ground as a warning to others. Comment from the netizens: black and swarthy, twisted bastard. Just because he couldn't develop a new cultivation technique, he actually had the idea of taking revenge on society. If it weren't for the fact that we weren't in the same era, I would have definitely gone to the scene to applaud on the day of your execution. Now, I can only give 666 on your execution video. Hard to walk, a scourge that was recorded in history. As a human, he didn't want to fight for the rise of humanity. Instead, when he was depressed, he had the idea of destroying the world. I don't know what Feng Qi was thinking at that time, but his actions were worthy of the word bastard. In my opinion, after looking through the historical data, I suspected that Feng Qi had been possessed. He was once dazzling and fought for the rise of humanity. During this period, he researched many cultivation techniques that would affect future generations. He also participated in the design of the early cultivation system. Logically speaking, someone like him was destined to become a great person in history. However, he suddenly became a different person. He didn't have the talent he once had and secretly gathered students to form Breaking Dawn. His goal was to destroy the world. I really suspect that Feng Qi had been possessed by a special domain creature, irresistible force. If it weren't for Feng Qi, Mu Qing wouldn't have betrayed humanity. The seeds of disaster were already buried on the day Feng Qi died. I read a history uploader's explanation. He was very certain that Mu Qing's betrayal of humanity was related to Feng Qi. He also gave a lot of examples. Those who are interested can take a look. The explanation is very detailed. After reading the evaluation of the people in the future, Feng Qi couldn't help but fall silent. He didn't understand. He already knew that there were werewolves among the students. Why did he step onto the same old path in the future and be labeled as a human traitor again? Could it be that they didn't find the werewolves among the students? With doubts, he clicked on the attached execution video in the information page. The location of the execution was still Star City's first execution ground. The beheading was still carried out by Star City's military personnel. In order to save time, he dragged the progress bar to fast forward. The execution process this time was similar to the previous one. The moment he was about to be beheaded, Mu Qing led the members of the Dawn Domain battle group and wanted to take him away. During this time, Mu Qing even had a conflict with the Star City's military personnel. A large-scale battle almost broke out. Fortunately, he stopped it in time. At the end of the video, Mu Qing's body was trembling. She carried his body and left the surveillance screen step by step. Seeing this, Feng Qi fell silent for a long time. In the end, he closed the execution video. He clicked on the search bar and started a search for the history uploader's explanation of Mu Qing. The netizens said that he was related to Mu Qing's betrayal of humanity, but he didn't agree. Perhaps he was very important to Mu Qing, but he and Mu Qing had the same dream. Mu Qing also clearly understood what his obsession was before he died. How could he betray the previous agreement and point his butcher's knife at humanity? Therefore, he was very curious about the history uploader. Where did he get the evidence that Mu Qing's betrayal of humanity was related to him? While searching, he finally found the Mu Qing's explanation in the database that the netizens were talking about. The following content is best used with the background music. Thoughts through time. A devil nailed to the pillar of shame in history actually has a gentle side that you don't understand. Editor, Xiaoyu loves history content. With bronze as a mirror, one can straighten one's clothes. With history as a mirror, one can know the rise and fall. With people as a mirror, one can know the gains and losses. Welcome to my history topic. Today, we will explain the most brutal devil in history, Mu Qing. When you talk about Mu Qing, you will definitely think of the words that adults say to children when they scare them. Everyone's impression of Mu Qing is generally that she is brutal, cold, ruthless, bloodthirsty, and so on. All the adjectives used to describe a villain. But in fact, if you look at history, you'll find that the devil also has a side that people don't know about. Next, let me explain the other side of the devil, Mu Qing. There are many explanations in history as to why Mu Qing betrayed humanity. Some people say that Mu Qing was brutal by nature, and the idea of destroying humanity was buried long ago after her family passed away. Some people say that Mu Qing hated humanity from the bottom of her heart because of the Rune Transformation Project, and that was why she had the idea of destroying the world. There are many other explanations, but here I want to talk about the reason that I think fits the most. I think that the main reason Mu Qing betrayed humanity is because of her best friend at Star City University, Feng Qi. Don't criticize, let me explain in detail. Actually, after Mu Qing was secretly executed, the military found a diary when they were sorting out his information. This diary was classified information at the time, but 300 years later, it became common information. This allowed me to peek at the other side of Mu Qing. It was also because of this diary that I understood how important Feng Qi was to Mu Qing. I extracted a few important snippets from it for everyone. Snippets of the diary. If I had never seen the light, I could have endured the darkness. The cold wind at the end of the sky. It has been 3,214 days since you left. In these 3,000 days and nights, I would always dream of you kneeling in front of the guillotine with a face full of despair. When you woke up, your eyes would be filled with tears. I regret not saving you at the execution more than once, even if you hate me for it. I know that the memories of you are destined to never be forgotten. You are a ray of light that penetrated my heart, letting me know how beautiful the light is. Your appearance affected me, but your death also left a wound in my heart that cannot be healed. I saw the truth, and it also proved in my heart that you were right, although I never doubted you. Only after enduring the long night can I see the dawn. Let's call it dawn. I suddenly remembered something you said before. You said that dying bravely for a great dream was the most foolish thing to do, and living humbly for a dream was the choice of a smart person. Since I took this step, could I be considered the most foolish type of person? Haha, I've already seen my failure, and my ending will be the same as yours. But I believe that the revolutionaries will not stop, and there will be new us in the future. I salute the future, and also salute the you who fought tirelessly for an ideal world. Seeing an object makes one think of the person, but when the thoughts gather into a sea, it becomes a kind of torture. In my free time, I composed a new song. I named it Thoughts Passing Through Time. Today, I put the harmonica in your grave and will never touch it again. Next, I will accept the challenge of the whole world and continue to fight for your dream and also for my dream. This is an era where farewells are popular. People are constantly leaving, but I'm not good at farewells. I only remember you in my heart, especially you. In the past, I didn't understand why people put their hopes in those illusory gods. They don't exist, and they can't change reality. Later, I understood that when you're desperate and helpless, a spark in the darkness can warm the whole world, and you are my former faith. I have lost everything. Nothing can hurt me anymore. Now, I'm stronger than ever. Even if the world fears me like a demon king, my heart is still firm. I will not give up until I reach my goal. I am injured. It hurts, but I will recover soon after I eat. I suddenly remember the days when we ate at Shuefa restaurant. I remember you said that I would not have money to buy food after graduation and that I would not be able to feed myself. Although I didn't express my thoughts at that time, I couldn't fall asleep at night. I was worried the whole night. The next morning, I gathered my courage and made a decision. If I am really going to starve to death, I will come to you for food. I can lose face, but I can't not eat. I am about to face my last battle. Before I leave, I will eat until I'm full. It has been a long time since I ate to my heart's content. I may die. I didn't die. Tomorrow, I will eat until I'm full. I hope you have earned a lot of money in the underworld. That way, I can come to you for food. You also know that I have a big appetite. After reading these excerpts from the diary, I think everyone should understand the importance of Feng Qi to Mu Qing. The revolution that Mu Qing talked about was the destruction of the world. In order to continue Feng Qi's unfinished goal, she chose to become the enemy of the world without hesitation. After reading the diary, I couldn't help but think that if Feng Qi's goal was to save the world, then Mu Qing would definitely carry out his belief and work tirelessly to save the world. With Mu Qing's ability, she would have a huge impact on the future. It is really regrettable. The last part is a rumor about Mu Qing. It is said that after Feng Qi died, Mu Qing buried him somewhere in Star City. Every year, she would set aside a day to secretly sneak into Star City to visit him. Then she would sit in front of his tombstone and play the song Thoughts Through Time, written for Feng Qi, and offer him a flower. I think that Mu Qing, who took off her cruel appearance, is the real her. Next, let's talk about Mu Qing's feelings for Feng Qi. After looking through the history, I feel that their relationship is very complicated. They are not lovers, but above friends. It is a very pure relationship. What is Mu Qing in Feng Qi's eyes? There is no way to verify it for the time being. But Mu Qing's feelings for Feng Qi are more like a kind of attachment, not the love between lovers. Feng Qi is like Mu Qing's shelter. No matter if there is a storm outside, as long as Feng Qi is by her side, she can feel at ease. It can be described with a passage in Mu Qing's diary. In the past, I didn't understand why people put their hopes in those illusory gods. They clearly don't exist and can't change reality. Later, I understood that when there is despair and helplessness, a spark in the darkness can warm the whole world, and you are my former faith. Speaking to this point, is everyone in disbelief? In fact, after reading the diary, I also couldn't help but sigh. I can't imagine that the great demon king who led the rebel army to massacre several cities and a large number of innocent people would have such a childish side in front of Feng Qi. Perhaps the root of everything is that during Mu Qing's most painful period, Feng Qi barged into her life, brought her warmth, and made her feel that Feng Qi was the light she yearned for. Later on, she carried the curse of the world for the dream of the dead. Even before she died, she still wanted to continue Feng Qi's dream. Through some special channels, I saw a few photos taken when Mu Qing was besieged. In the photos, she was covered in wounds, and even walking was difficult, but she still persisted in fighting and didn't take a step back until she died. At the same time, I feel that she is very sad. What did Feng Qi do to make you work so hard to carry out his dream? When I wrote this, I suddenly thought of a sentence. A soldier dies for his bosom friend. This might be the reason why Mu Qing was willing to repeat Feng Qi's mistakes even though she knew she was on the wrong path. It was because that wrong path was the path Feng Qi once walked, and it was also the light in her eyes. Next, for a detailed explanation of the great demon king Mu Qing, I welcome everyone to my live stream. Let's continue to chat in the live stream. Netizens' comments: a lemon extract. Fuck you, Feng Qi. I feel more and more that dog doesn't deserve to be human. After reading the Up's explanation, I suddenly feel sorry for Mu Qing. As long as she chose the right path, she could have had a bright future. However, because of Feng Qi's influence, she walked down a path of no return and became the great demon king that was spurned by the world. I am immortal. The Up's explanation really subverted my understanding. I really didn't understand this period of history in detail, so I always felt that Mu Qing was evil to the core and was born to be a sinner. However, after reading your explanation, I understand that Mu Qing's actions had a root cause. In the end, it was Feng Qi who harmed Mu Qing. Sigh. I yearn for victory. After reading the diary, I suddenly felt that Mu Qing wasn't as evil as the historical description said. She also had a soft side in her heart. However, she chose to give this side to that dog Feng Qi and showed her evil side to the world. As the Up said, if it weren't for Feng Qi, she could have been named the god of war and the god of war. She would have been honored in the future, recorded in the annals of history, and become a great figure praised by all. At that time, after reading the diary, I wanted to dig up Feng Qi's grave. How could that bastard still affect the world after death? Loud beep. Aside from Mu Qing, there was also Lu Yu from the Sword Sect. He was actually willing to become Feng Qi's pawn. As the only direct descendant of the Lu family swordsmanship, he really embarrassed his ancestors. Our ancestors sacrificed their lives for the rise of mankind, but he chose to follow Feng Qi to destroy the world. I really don't understand where Feng Qi got the magic power to make so many people follow him. I wanted to scold them for being brainless, but I suddenly remembered that they were the best of the new generation. How could they be brainless? Sigh, in short, I'm so angry. Spicy potato chips. The Up's explanation is too subjective, but after I checked the evidence you provided, I found that it was indeed true. I suddenly felt a trace of sympathy for Mu Qing, but she was wrong. We can't forgive this sinful devil on behalf of our predecessors. She doesn't deserve our forgiveness. Time Mouse. If my era could make a time machine, I would definitely drive it to Feng Qi's era and chop off his dog head. Then, the future would definitely be turned upside down. After reading the content of the information, Feng Qi's heart couldn't calm down for a long time. After he left, it turned out that he wasn't the only one in pain. Mu Qing, who carried the same dream as him, was also in pain. The world didn't know what the revolution she spoke of was, but how could he not know? It was definitely not the end of the world, but the salvation of the world. At this moment, he could be sure of one thing. Mu Qing wasn't controlled by any force. She was always free. She just chose the most evil way to fight for justice. After reading the content, he felt incomparable pain. The future shrouded in darkness was like a bone gangrene that spurred him forward. However, every effort was in exchange for failure and pain. He exhausted his 108,000 dreams, but in the end, it was all in vain. It seemed that no matter how hard he tried, the ideal ending was still far away. All he got was pain. There will always be a breeze that fills your 108,000 dreams. Although the world treats you with the greatest malice, you still maintain kindness. I think there's only one kind of true hero in the world, and that is to see the truth of the world and still love it. Remember, it wasn't you who chose to take on the mission, but the mission chose you. Hearing these words, Feng Qi's face showed a touch of confusion. Although he was only 17 years old, an age that many people thought was very immature. However, he had lived alone since he was young and learned to take care of himself. He always felt that he was very strong and far more mature than his peers. However, at this moment, he still felt lonely and sad. His heart was empty, as if he had been abandoned by the world. At this moment, he just wanted to curl up alone at the end of the world and cry silently. A hero's life is destined to face 3 times of growth. The first time is when you realize that the future of this world isn't what you want. The second time is when you realize that some things are impossible no matter how hard you try. The third time is when you know that some things are impossible, but you still fight for it. Come on, little hero. Narrator, you're so F***king pretentious. I'm getting goosebumps. Feng Chi said with red eyes. Tisk tsk. Look, our little hero is about to cry. He still needs to train his endurance. I'm not crying. It's just a small setback. There are more difficult challenges waiting for me in the future. How can I cry because of this? I won't compromise. I won't fall. I'll fight to the end. Feng Chi retorted with a hoarse voice. Even if you see through it, don't say it. We're still good friends. Come, give me a smile. Get lost. Okay. I want monthly votes. I want to fly. Chapter 81. Under the teasing of the narrator, Feng Chi's depression was relieved. He, who had always been optimistic, quickly pulled himself together again. Because no matter how difficult the road ahead was, he would not choose to give up. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, it was worth it for him to persevere with all his might. He closed the discussion page about Mu Qing. He entered Mu Qing's name in the search page and clicked confirm. After filtering, Mu Qing's details appeared. Mu Qing, Rebel Army Leader. Introduction. She voluntarily joined the Rune-modified human project when she was young and perfectly fused with a special rune crystal, confidential, during the experiment. She obtained the super ability to absorb energy from food. When she was 17 years old, she left the Scarlet Institute and joined Star City University as a student. During that time, she was unknown and did not display her abilities. However, after she graduated and joined the Domain Battle Group, her abilities were displayed. During that time, she made many contributions and used her own abilities to raise the Howling Wind Domain Battle Group from B to S rank. 2 years later, she left the Howling Wind Domain Battle Group and formed one of the strongest domain battle group in the world, Dawn. If she had followed her original path, Mu Qing's future would have been filled with glory. However, after Feng Chi's death, Mu Qing's temperament changed drastically. In the end, she formed the Dawn Rebel Army, which brought disaster to the world and challenged all of humanity. Her hands were stained with the blood of many innocent people. She led the rebel army to massacre several cities. Her sins were heavy, and she was hated by the future generations. Cause of death. Confidential. Highest authority. Tags. Rune-modified human. Dawn Rebels leader. Rebel army leader personality. Cruel, cold-blooded, and scrupulous netizens comments. I think it's doable. Come up and spit on me. My ancestor was one of the survivors of Mu Qing's massacre back then. He witnessed Mu Qing's brutality with his own eyes. Don't come up with any more retards in the comments. No matter why she betrayed humanity, what she did was wrong. Her sins cannot be washed away. She was a woman who had been nailed to the pillar of shame in history. She had spent her entire life in pain. Her relatives had passed away one after another, and in the end, she was the only one left alive. Then, she chose to join the Rune-modified human project and became a half-human, half-ghost Rune-modified human. She was treated coldly by others until she met Feng Chi. Only then did she feel a trace of warmth in the world. However, fate pushed her into the abyss like a joke. Her best friend had betrayed the human race. Perhaps it was the repeated pain that caused Mu Qing to walk down the path of no return. She wanted to destroy this ice-cold world. After reading about history, I decided to comment on this. Laughing at the wind rises. Read a lot of interpretations of Mu Qing inside. Feng Chi's existence was like a ray of light in Mu Qing's dark world. He existed for a short time and then disappeared. But to Mu Qing, his influence was far-reaching. She, who was in the dark, could endure the darkness, but because of that ray of light, she felt warmth and saw light. Feng Chi was like a shooting star that streaked across her inner world and disappeared at the end. Therefore, she chose to follow in the direction of the shooting star, even if it was a bottomless abyss in front of her. After reading the netizens' comments about Mu Qing, Feng Chi felt bad. She was inexplicably cursed, and her reputation will be tarnished for thousands of years. Especially these comments, the more I read, the angrier I get. They didn't know the truth, so it's normal to scold me. But it's still quite uncomfortable to read. What can you do? Do you want me to open a Smurf account and scold them back for you? Feng Qi was speechless. After being ridiculed by the voiceover, the sadness in his heart suddenly disappeared. After closing Mu Qing's introduction page, he entered Lu Yu in the search bar. After a while, Lu Yu's detailed information appeared on the screen. Lu Yu, human trader. Introduction. The Lu family swordsmanship had many glorious achievements against the domain invasion in the early years. They also participated in several successful dispelling of the domain, making great contributions to the continuation of human civilization. Lu Yu is the last successor of the Lu family swordsmanship. When Lu Yu was just born, the powerful Lu family swordsmanship was one of the main forces against the domain creatures. However, one day, they mysteriously disappeared and never appeared again. Only Lu Yu mysteriously returned when he was 17 years old. Lu Yu did not mention a word about his family's whereabouts. He never told the world, and this became an unsolved case. During the days when he was studying at Star City University, Lu Yu became Feng Qi's student and followed Feng Qi to betray humanity. After the incident, he was secretly executed. After Lu Yu's death, the Lu family's swordsmanship no longer had a successor. It was a pity that it disappeared from history. Cause of death, secret tags, swordsmanship, descendant of the Lu family, human trader netizens comments. Cola adds water. Lu Yu's betrayal of humanity is ridiculous. Their Lu family has many outstanding military achievements. Many of their ancestors died fighting against the domain invasion. In the end, Lu Yu actually betrayed humanity. I seriously suspect that Lu Yu is being controlled by Feng Qi. Otherwise, there is no reason for him to betray humanity. I can do it too. The most puzzling thing is not Lu Yu's betrayal, but why did the Lu family members mysteriously disappear? It was as if they disappeared from the face of the earth. Other than Lu Yu's mysterious return when he was 17 years old, where did the rest of the Lu family members go? Could it be that they were wiped out by the domain creatures? Even so, it's impossible for them to not leave any traces behind. I think only Lu Yu knows the truth. Unfortunately, Lu Yu did not reveal anything about this until his death. It has become an unsolved historical mystery. Dragon Roar. After looking through the information, I realized that Lu Yu's combat power is really strong. We lost a domain battle group in order to catch him. If we didn't get the information from somewhere and set up an ambush in advance, we might not have been able to catch him. It's a pity that such a strong guy is standing against us. It's sad and detestable. Battle online. If I'm not wrong, Lu Yu must have been bewitched by Feng Qi. Lu Yu was born in the Lu family. The environment he grew up in made it impossible for him to betray humanity. He hates domain creatures the most. So how could he have any thoughts of betraying them? So, the truth is just as I said, it's Feng Qi's fault. Oh my God, you're the scapegoat again. The netizens are blaming Feng Qi when they can't solve the problem. I really want to argue with them. Feng Qi was speechless. It's okay. If I put myself in their shoes and didn't know the truth, I would definitely scold them for betraying humanity too. So, I have to keep a good attitude. You were a nobody when you first entered the future dream. Through your own efforts, you turned yourself into a traitor to humanity. Now, you've become the source of disaster for future generations. Let me interview you. How do you feel now? I'm not affected at all. I even feel like laughing. He pretended to be calm. Then why are you clenching your fists so tightly? Are you angry? Do you want to argue with him too? Feng Qi was speechless. After reading Lu Yu's information, a doubt appeared in his mind. Where did the Lu family go? From the character introduction and the netizens' comments, it could be seen that the Lu family was a powerful force in the same era as him. They were also one of the main forces against the domain invasion. However, they seem to have evaporated overnight. The entire family of more than 100 people disappeared without a trace. Only Lu Yu returned alone when he was 17 years old. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered the heavenly path that Lu Yu mentioned. Could it be that after the Lu family disappeared, they went to this place? With doubts, he closed Lu Yu's introduction page and began to search for information about the heavenly path in the search bar. After entering the keywords, the search results appeared. However, what puzzled him was that the information about the heavenly path that appeared on the screen was related to games, TV shows, and other content. There was no other information at all. The search results made him confused. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. Usually, even if the content was confidential, he could still search for relevant information. It was just that he didn't have enough authority to open it. However, this was the first time he had no clues. He felt that there were only two possibilities for this situation. First, Lu Yu lied. There was no such place as the Heavenly Path or a mysterious organization called the Heavenly Path. Second, the confidentiality level of the information about the Heavenly Path exceeded that of Mu Qing's death. Not only was it blocked on the internet, it was also completely blocked in history. In order to understand the truth, he closed the search page and began to search for information related to the mysterious disappearance of the Liu family. As he flipped through the information, his expression gradually became serious. He found that there were many cases of mysterious disappearances in history, and those who disappeared were all strong people of their time. They all suddenly disappeared one day, as if they had evaporated into thin air and never appeared again. It was very similar to the mysterious disappearance of the Liu family. At the same time that he felt his hair stand on end, he suddenly thought of his parents. When he was a child, he received information that his parents had disappeared in an operation to disperse a domain. However, the team members didn't find their bodies, only the equipment that they wore. He didn't know how strong his parents were, but he knew that the domain battle team that his parents were in was very strong. He once heard the neighbor's Annie say enviously that it would be great if her son could join that domain battle team in the future. Could it be that his parents' disappearance was related to this? Blind monk, you've discovered something. Narrator, do you know the reason for the mysterious disappearance of strong people of the time? I don't know. However, I do know that many strong people in history mysteriously disappeared at some point in time, never to appear again. After hearing the narrator's answer, he became even more confused. Could it be that they were assassinated by a domain transcendental life entity? However, he immediately rejected his own guess. Based on the information he had, that mysterious organization that assassinated geniuses of the time would only target the geniuses of the new generation. Moreover, the assassination wasn't completely traceless. Lin Ran had records of him avoiding assassination attempts. Those who disappeared were all strong people of the time who had been famous for a long time. If the mysterious organization wanted to kill them, they wouldn't be able to leave no traces behind every time. Therefore, there had to be some other reason for their disappearance. This made him think of the heavenly path mentioned by Lu Yu. Could it be that all the mysterious disappearance of strong people had gone to this place? Previously, at the school field, Lu Yu had told Lin Ran that if it was him, he might have a chance to go there in the future. Feng Qi's current interpretation of these words was that with his talent, he might have a chance to become a strong person and might have a chance to go to the heavenly path. If Lu Yu's words were true, then there was an extremely high probability that these missing strong people had gone to this place called the heavenly path. As he thought of this, new doubts appeared in his heart. Where exactly was this heavenly path? Why did these strong people go there? After thinking for a while, he helplessly gave up since he couldn't figure out the reason. Information regarding the heavenly path couldn't be found in the database. Therefore, he could only look for the answer in the real world. The breakthrough lay in Lu Yu. Chapter 82. Unable to find anything related to the heavenly road, Feng Qi chose to give up. Because there were still many things to do. Before Xiao He arrived, he began to search for information related to the sucker. This time, he did not use Mu Qing as a starting point. Instead, he directly searched for information related to the sucker in the database. Previously, he had been looking for the connection between Mu Qing and the sucker. Now, he felt that he could completely change his approach. Just like Xiao He, he felt that since the sucker could live until now, the people in the future must have related records about her. After entering keywords such as girl, white hair, powerful, and other keywords, he pressed the search button. After waiting for a few seconds, the relevant content appeared. While looking through the information, he quickly found the information about the sucker. Under the title, there was a picture of the sucker sitting in front of a nameless tombstone with a flower in the soil in front of her. What is the origin of the immortal Bai Tong? I have organized the detailed information to decipher it. OP. Nowhere to hide. Content sad face attachment. Bai Tong's picture. JPG. Hello everyone. I'm back after half a month of hiatus. Did you miss me? Today we will talk about a topic that has been talked about by many riddle-solving uploaders. Bai Tong's origin. This time, I have organized the detailed historical information, and there will definitely be something different. Now, let's go straight to the main topic. We call the girl in the picture Bai Tong. This is related to her gray eyes, snow-white hair, and other physical characteristics. There is no trace of who first came up with this name. According to historical records, Bai Tong first appeared in the year 2076. At that time, Star City was facing the threat of the Silver Moon domain from the east and was facing the crisis of being destroyed. At that time, most of the forces in Star City were transferred to support Future City. They did not expect this at all. It was too late for reinforcements to come back in a short period of time, and the forces left in the city were not enough to deal with this crisis. Just as the residents in the city were panicking, our little friend Bai Tong made a shining appearance. She had single-handedly taken on the Silver Moon domain's monster tide, forcibly holding back the expansion of the Silver Moon domain. She had even managed to disperse the terrifying Silver Moon domain in the midst of a fierce battle. It was this battle that made her a god. This battle had also caused White Eye to suffer severe injuries, and the runic crystal embedded in her left arm had also shattered. At that time, the residents of Star City had tried many ways to contact White Eye, wanting to help her heal her injuries. However, White Eye was very wary of humans and never allowed anyone to get close to her. In the years that followed, White Eye stayed in Star City and became the city's mascot. Her origin had always been a hot topic among the residents of Star City, but until now, no one had been able to find any information that could prove the girl's origin. There were three main guesses about White Eye's background. The first guess was that White Eye was the only domain transcendent life form that stood on the side of the humans. Just like the traitors of the humans, she was also a traitor of the domain transcendent life forms. This guess had the highest degree of approval from the masses. This was because there was no lack of highly intelligent life forms that looked very similar to humans. White Eye could very well be one of the domain transcendent life forms that we had yet to discover. The second guess was that White Eye was a rune-modified human in the early days. She had lost control during a rune-modified human experiment and had returned after recovering part of her memories. This guess was full of loopholes and was full of flaws. After looking at history, you would understand that those who participated in the rune-modified human experiment were all adults. The only underage case was the great demon king, Mu Qing. At that time, Mu Qing was already 7 or 8 years old. Judging from her appearance, White Eye was only 2 or 3 years old. How could she have participated in the rune-modified human experiment? It was even more impossible for her to have withstood the various experiments of the rune-modified human experiment. Thus, this guess could be completely ruled out. No one believed in rumors and did not spread them. The third guess was that White Eye was the descendant of one of the participants of the rune-modified human experiment. Thus, White Eye's body was embedded with a runic crystal, and she had terrifying combat strength. In my opinion, this guess was very reliable. The rune-modified human experiment was completely shelved after the death of the great demon king, Mu Qing. However, at that time, there were still many scavengers who completed the rune-modified human experiment. Moreover, many of them had given birth to offspring. Among this batch of offspring, there was no lack of new humans who were born with strength comparable to domain transcendent life forms. However, they were born with physical defects, and it was very difficult for them to live past 100 years old. White Eye had already existed for more than 500 years. Just like the title said, she seemed to be immortal. Tom did not leave any traces on her body. As for why White Eye wanted to help humans, there were many stories circulating. However, these stories were all related to the nameless tombstone. One of the most popular stories was that a cultivator in Star City found the heavily injured White Eye while dispelling the domain. He could not bear to see her like this and brought her back to Star City. He took good care of her and helped her recover. During this time, White-Eye developed an attachment to that cultivator. However, a person's lifespan was limited. One day, that cultivator passed away. White-Eye, who was heartbroken, buried him in an uninhabited area in Star City and erected a nameless tombstone for him. This was also the reason why White-Eye chose to help when Silver Moon's domain attacked, because Star City was that person's home. Even though she lost most of her memories after dispelling Silver Moon's domain, she still remembered that nameless tombstone. That was the memory she wanted to protect the most. Whether this story is true or not, we have no way of knowing. However, what we can be sure of is that the nameless tombstone was very important to White-Eye. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, 500 years had passed. Today, White-Eye has become our Star City's mascot and guardian. However, she is still unwilling to come into contact with anyone. Her origin has always been a mystery. There is no information that can explain it. Her whereabouts in Star City were also erratic. Some people have seen her snatching food from wild dogs in some alleys. Some people have seen her lying on the top of a tall building in the dead of night, looking up at the bright, starry sky, as if she was thinking of an old friend. There are also people who often see her kneeling in front of the nameless tombstone in the morning, lowering her head to offer flowers and crying silently. However, her old friend had passed away. All that accompanied White-Eye were memories and endless loneliness. After reading this article about the origin of the sucker, Feng Qi was both moved and distressed. At this time, he found out that the residents of Star City knew about the existence of the sucker. They even regarded her as their mascot and guardian. As for who the owner of the nameless tombstone was, the residents of Star City did not know. However, how could he not know? Could it be that she was really Mu Qing? The answer to this question could not be verified until he found the ice sculpture of Mu Qing's body that was buried in the shelter. However, he knew that the sucker was definitely related to Mu Qing. After the future him was executed, his body was taken away by Mu Qing. What was buried under the nameless tombstone was the ashes of the future him. The sucker would not worship him for no reason. Time was limited. He could only give up as he could not figure out the reason. He could continue to investigate the origin of the sucker in the future. The most important thing now was to look at the contents of the mailbox and see what messages the future him and Mo Fei left for him. Then he entered the password of his private mailbox in the database. After waiting for a few seconds, the mailbox page popped up. After entering the 12-digit password, the mailbox opened and a message appeared on the screen. He skimmed through the unimportant messages and only looked at the important points. The contents of the mailbox. The organization has been secretly established. I named it Daybreak, which corresponds to Mu Qing's dawn. Don't you think it sounds good? They both symbolize the arrival of the light. Laugh. JPG. In order to find the hidden werewolf, I will be vigilant against everyone, including Lu Yu, who seems the least likely to be a werewolf. I have arranged different tasks for them. Lu Yu will continue to be responsible for protecting the new generation of geniuses. I have decided to arrange for Jia Yi to enter the Scarlet Institute to investigate because he has the strongest learning talent in the Daybreak organization. As long as he works hard, he can enter the Scarlet Institute even if he starts from scratch. The time is almost ripe. Today, I received the information from Jia Yi. The Scarlet Institute is going to set up a new research base outside Star City. This time, I plan to give every member a completely different wrong location information. I also borrowed a batch of stealth detection robots from Mo Fei and hid them at every coordinate in advance. As long as a mysterious person appears at any location, I will be able to accurately find the hidden werewolf. Let's wait and see. Sitting in front of the monitor, I can't believe it. The location I gave the wrong information to didn't have any members of the mysterious organization who came to cause trouble. Instead, members of the mysterious organization appeared at the correct location. Could it be that Jia Yi is a werewolf? Apart from Jia Yi and me, no one else has the correct information. Now that the mysterious organization has the correct information, all the evidence points to Jia Yi being the undercover werewolf. This mysterious organization seems to have realized that there's something wrong with my organization, and they're secretly investigating it. Therefore, they've decided to directly take action against me. After this incident of me providing false information, I've been placed under investigation by Star City's military. My situation is very bad right now. It's time to go find Mo Fei and give him my mailbox. Today, I went to the Technology Research Institute. Suddenly, I started to suspect that Jia Yi is a werewolf. When I went through the security check at the Technology Research Institute, it was discovered that a specialized monitoring chip had been implanted in my body. Therefore, is there a possibility that the content of my video chat with Jia Yi was actually obtained by the real werewolf of the organization through the monitoring chip? Furthermore, after receiving the false information, he realized that I was already suspecting the members of the organization. Therefore, he went ahead with his plan and carried out his mission as usual. At the same time, he passed the truth to the mysterious organization behind him and told them that I am no longer under their control. Therefore, the mysterious organization decided to take action against me. I don't have time to investigate the truth anymore. Today, the Star City military came again and listed that I secretly established the Breaking Dawn organization, planted a spy in the Scarlet Institute, ordered Liu Yu to assassinate a genius of the new generation, and a series of other crimes. I have no way to quibble. This time, I might die even earlier than before. I have already given my mailbox to Mo Fei and told him everything I know. Perhaps he can provide you with useful information. Also, I told Mo Fei that I had traveled to the future. This brat insisted on doing a mental examination and refused to believe me. The problem is that I have no way to prove that I can travel to the future. When I said that the techniques I created were all plagiarized, he scolded me for having a mental illness. In the end, I swore and promised him that this brat reluctantly believed what I said. It's quite depressing. Although I know that I will definitely die in this timeline, when death really comes, I am still full of attachment and reluctance to part with this world. I'm sorry to tell you that I don't have time to fall in love and have children. However, I have already entrusted the matter of obtaining an account to Mo Fei. Perhaps he can help you solve this problem. Goodbye, beautiful world. I am free. You can do it. Seeing this, Feng Qi couldn't help but sigh. In the end, he still couldn't find the werewolf hiding in the Breaking Dawn organization. All his efforts were in vain. In the future, him couldn't escape the fate of being placed on the guillotine. Don't be fooled by the fact that the future you said goodbye to this world in a rather relaxed manner and even said that you were free. In fact, he just didn't want to give you any pressure. Perhaps at that time, he would have already cried his heart out and used up at least 3 boxes of tissues. What do you mean by crying his heart out? That's used to describe a woman when she cries. Even if I cry like a strong man. Feng Qi couldn't help but roll his eyes. Oh, then how do you describe a strong man crying? A storm crying? Thunder crying? Or a strong man sobbing? Feng Qi was speechless. After being ridiculed by the narrator, the sadness in his heart faded away, and he gave the narrator the middle finger in his heart. Next, he clicked on the second column in his mailbox. This column was labeled with the words Mo Fei. It was clearly a message that Mo Fei had left for him. Chapter 83. After reading Mu Qing's diary, Feng Qi was certain of one thing. Mu Qing had never betrayed humanity. She had always insisted on their common dream and fought for humanity. But just from reading Mu Qing's diary, it was impossible to understand the specific reason why Mu Qing massacred the city and why she wanted to kill the civilians. Now, he could only hope that Mo Fei's email might contain the information he wanted. He clicked on the Mo Fei column in his mailbox, and a message immediately appeared. Email, Mo Fei. Before your execution, I didn't believe what you said at all. After all, traveling to the future is too ridiculous. I believe in science and believe that time travel only exists in sci-fi and fantasy movies. Even if it's the future, it's impossible for there to be such a thing. It's not that I'm underestimating the development of human science, but because time is something that can't be sensed by human senses. It can only be reflected through various reference systems. For example, The movement of the clock on a wristwatch shows the passage of time, or our three-dimensional organs show us the sight, hearing, and touch to feel the so-called time. So, how can something with a vague definition be controlled and be able to travel as one pleases? But after watching your execution video, I was shocked to discover that your experience was exactly as you predicted, including the appearance of mooching. Now, I believe that you traveled to the future. I didn't dare to watch the execution video to the end because I couldn't watch it anymore. It was too F***ing painful. Just thinking about it made me feel like I couldn't stand it. In order to get out of this state as soon as possible, I forced myself to get drunk, but when I woke up the next day, I saw the news of your execution. F***ck, my brother's gone just like that. After reading the previous messages, I have a rough idea of what you want to do. Next, I will carry your dream. Others may not believe you, but how can I not believe you? While reading, Feng Qi increased his reading speed. He skipped over some emotional comments and started to read the useful information. Look at the recent news and reports. Tell me about the whereabouts of the remaining members of Breaking Dawn. First, the 3 Xiao brothers. They were all sentenced to death. After you, they went to the guillotine. Before they died, they said they didn't regret following you. The undercover Jia, he was also executed. He was executed by the Scarlet Institute. I've seen the video that was released after that. He's a man. Before he died, he didn't say a single bad word about you. Yin Fu, Yang Xiaoxin, Lu Pingyin, Kai Gua, and Su Honyun joined Breaking Dawn and didn't participate in any operations. They only helped Breaking Dawn develop, so their cases were lighter. Plus, the faction behind them protected them, so they were only sentenced to life imprisonment. Other than you, the most serious case was Lu Yu, who was dealt with in secret. There were quite a lot of protests about this, but the government resisted the pressure and only said that Lu Yu had a special identity and was secretly executed. Are you confused? Actually, I'm also confused. You said that there were werewolves among these students, but all of them were executed. They weren't taken away by the faction behind them. I suspect that your conjecture was wrong. There were no werewolves at all. The one who installed the chip in your body wasn't a member of your organization. Speaking of which, do you still remember the psionic technology one told you about? Actually, the Science and Technology Research Institute has already started research in this area. There are already obvious results, but they haven't been released to the public. I only found out about it by accident. Maybe it's because this technology isn't perfect and mature enough. I was promoted and my authority level was raised. I also received a very ridiculous research direction. It's about the creation of psionic nanoworms. Can this thing really be researched? Fortunately, we're only responsible for part of the concept. The core content is handled by the big shots in the Science and Technology Research Institute. F***ck. Something big happened today. Su Hongyun, Kai Gua, and Lu Pingyin, who were sentenced to life imprisonment, were secretly released and then taken away by the faction behind them. Are these 3 werewolves? Or did the faction behind them pay a huge price to bail them out? This news wasn't released to the public, so the public doesn't know about it. Otherwise, there would be an uproar. I found out about it through internal channels and chatting with the big shots because Lu Pingyin has a background in the Science and Technology Research Institute. This news is also confidential in our Science and Technology Research Institute. Why do I feel that the Science and Technology Research Institute's research direction is getting more and more ridiculous? There's actually progress in the research of psionic nanoworms. From chatting with the big shots, I found out that they seem to want to create a special mechanical warrior that can heal its body at any time. However, the current results are still far from completion. Recently, a director of the Science and Technology Research Institute proposed a concept. Can the runic crystals of domain creatures be used as the power source of the nanoworms? By combining the two, they can create a runic psionic nano-robot warrior. The ideas in the minds of these old men are too wild. What's even more ridiculous is that this proposal was actually passed. I hope that too many resources will not be wasted on this research. My authority level isn't high enough, so I can't come into contact with the detailed deployment plans in this area. However, I hope that you can bring back important information in this area from the future. Perhaps it will be able to greatly promote the development of human science and technology. Sigh. Mu Qing still formed the Dawn Rebels. Everything is exactly as you predicted, but I can't find out why she betrayed humanity. I've tried to get in touch with her, but there's no way to contact her at the moment. It's said that she's currently forming a research team on rune modification and is preparing to continue the research on rune modification. Mu Qing has been too crazy these past few years. She can even be described as deranged. She's been destroying cities and massacring people everywhere. I received news early this morning that Mu Qing is dead. I don't know the details, but it's said that all the cities worked together to carry out an operation. In the end, Mu Qing was taken away and secretly executed. Star City is in danger. The Silver Moon domain in the east is suddenly expanding rapidly towards Star City. Right now, most of Star City's combat power has been sent to reinforce Future City. There's no way for them to make it back in time. Didn't you say that I could live for more than 90 years? Why do I feel like I'm going to die today? There's still 30 years to the date you mentioned. Oh my God! A little girl suddenly appeared and repelled the invasion of the Silver Moon Territory's domain all by herself. She even completely dispelled it. Is she the super suction weapon you described to me? The suction cup? It should be the suction cup, but I really can't find out where she came from. I don't have any clues. After that, the messages were all meaningless trifles. Mo Fei, who had been staying in the Science and Technology Research Institute, had very limited information. While scrolling through the messages, Feng Qi found that the follow-up messages were all related to the research results of the Science and Technology Research Institute and the direction of research. At the same time, Mo Fei strongly hoped that he could promote the scientific development of human civilization and bring back some important research data from the future. Just when he thought that there was nothing meaningful in the follow-up messages in his mailbox, a message attracted his attention. The research on the unmanned, invisible flying surveillance device has been successful. I recently deployed it beside the nameless tombstone to observe the movements of White Eye. Guess what I took a picture of? A woman actually came into contact with the suction cup, and the suction cup didn't resist her touch. Let me show you the high-definition picture I took. Picture attachment. JPG. With doubts, Feng Qi clicked on the attached picture. When he saw the appearance of the woman in the picture, his pupils suddenly contracted. The woman in the picture turned out to be the director of the genetics department of the Scarlet Institute, Vivian. Decades had passed, but her appearance still hadn't changed at all. In an instant, a complete line of reasoning was formed in his mind. Collecting the blood of a genius, rune-modified person, Mu Qing, genetic research, replication genius. All kinds of keywords were connected in his mind. He couldn't help but guess that perhaps Vivian used Mu Qing's genes to replicate and cultivate the suction cup. This would explain a lot of problems. After all, it was a genetic replication, so there would definitely be defects, causing the body of the suction cup to never grow. This would also explain why the suction cup was so attached to him. It was because the suction cup inherited part of Mu Qing's memories and feelings, so it was naturally close to him. Therefore, after the suction cup was activated, it would habitually repeat what Mu Qing wanted to do the most, including going to his tombstone to offer flowers. If this was the case, then even the Scarlet Institute could be partially cleared. If he continued to think about the above, the suction cup was definitely a secret weapon developed by the Scarlet Institute. Due to the sudden expansion of Silver Moon's domain, Star City was faced with the crisis of being destroyed. The Scarlet Institute had no choice but to activate the suction cup and use her to fight against Silver Moon's domain. However, after Silver Moon's domain was dispelled, the suction cup was no longer controlled by the Scarlet Institute. It was only close to Vivian, who created it, so it was still wandering around Star City. The only thing that couldn't be completely clear to the Scarlet Institute was that there was a domain transcendental being in the Scarlet Institute. So far, there was no record of a domain being coexisting peacefully with humans. The only thing that was controversial on the internet was the suction cup. However, the controversy was based on the fact that the suction cup was a domain being. Mo Fei's message gave him a clearer understanding of the suction cup's origin. Although it was only a speculation, when he thought about Vivian's identity as the director of the genetics department of the Scarlet Institute and how she personally said that she wanted to mass-produce geniuses, this line of reasoning was very reasonable. The possibility of the suction cup being a clone of Mu Qing was greatly increased. Perhaps after Mu Qing died, she was sent to the Scarlet Institute. Then, the Scarlet Institute transplanted the rune crystal from Mu Qing's body into the embryo and gave birth to the suction cup. Just as he was about to search the database to confirm this speculation, the voice of the narrator rang in his mind. Ding! Slayer Xiaohei is on the way. Please pay attention to the time, or else you'll die. Hearing the reminder, he realized that there was no time to continue investigating. He had to leave first. Before leaving, he took another look at the photo on the screen. He was extremely curious about Vivian's identity. Why didn't she age? Was she a friend or foe? However, he had already used up his access to the character's information. He could only wait until the next time he entered the future dream to investigate Vivian's character information. Without wasting any more time, he immediately walked towards the direction of the metal tunnel. The most important thing now was to leave this place as soon as possible and then retrieve the protective suction cup. As for the other messages in his mailbox, as well as the unsolved content, he would have to wait until the next time he came back. 16,000 words finished. Continue to ask for monthly votes. Ask for rewards. Chapter 84. After leaving the shelter, Feng Qi went straight to the east. The zombies and death worms he encountered along the way became targets for him to vent his emotions. The depression in his heart was released during this period. As he moved forward with his punches and kicks, he found that his physical fitness had improved significantly again. Whether it was his jumping ability or his strength, they were both stronger than before. In fact, he also thought of doing nothing and only relying on hunting monsters in the future dream to strengthen himself. But after careful consideration, he gave up on this option. If he had endless money to replenish his energy, he could do so. Although his fists could not solve all problems, they could solve most of them. The problem was that he did not have enough money to waste. The benefits obtained by using this method of strengthening himself were the lowest, and it could not solve the many hidden problems in history. For example, the reason why Mu Qing massacred the city could not be solved by hunting monsters in the future dream several times. So before he had enough money, he did not plan to use improving his own strength as the main method for the time being. But he would not let go of any opportunity to improve his strength. Amidst the howling wind, Feng Qi's figure nimbly shuttled through the wilderness filled with piles of bones. After walking for some time, the ruins of the city appeared in front of him. He immediately quickened his pace and looked around vigilantly to prevent being ambushed by hidden domain creatures. Before he found a suction cup, he felt that it was better to be careful. His strength had indeed improved greatly compared to the beginning, but it was still not enough in front of a domain creature. Stepping into the street of the city ruins, what appeared in front of him was a street full of cracks and rubble. Plants of various shapes had grown in the cracks. The broken buildings on both sides of the street looked like they would collapse at any time, revealing rusty steel bars. The dilapidated scene in front of him was like the end of the world in the movies. Although the layout of the buildings here was slightly different from what he remembered, he had a rough idea of the direction of the abandoned neighborhood. He immediately continued to walk east. As he moved forward, he was very careful. He was not afraid of death because he could not escape from Xiaohei's pursuit no matter what. He was afraid of dying without any value. Ding! Ding! You turn your head and look in the direction of 3 o'clock. You found a seemingly inconspicuous gray plant not far away. Feng Qi was speechless. Puzzled, he turned to look in the 3 o'clock direction, and his eyes focused on a gray plant. The plant was gray in color, and its leaves were like feathers. They were covered in fine hairs. Just as the narrator had said, it was inconspicuous and had no distinguishing features compared to the surrounding weeds. He walked up to the plant and squatted down to examine it carefully. Aside, what's the use of this thing? You dug up the soil and discovered that this inconspicuous plant had grown a fiery red fruit at its roots. So, you decided to bring it to the sucker as a snack. Hearing this, he couldn't help but be stunned. What do you mean? Suckers like to eat this? You suddenly thought of something. Since Muqing's ability is to devour food to obtain power and absorb nutrient from food to quickly heal her body, it's very likely that the suckers of Muqing's clone can also absorb energy from food to heal her severely injured body. She might be able to obtain the power to defeat Xiao He. After listening to the narrator's roundabout explanation, he suddenly understood what the narrator meant. The answer to how powerful the suckers were could be found in history. She had once single-handedly resisted the expansion of the Silver Moon's domain and dispersed it. After that, she became famous after that battle. However, she was also severely injured because of that, and the rune crystal embedded in her left arm was shattered in that battle. During that time, the residents of Star City had thought of many ways to get in touch with the suckers and heal her. However, the suckers were vigilant against everyone and couldn't get close to her at all, so her injuries had yet to heal. In the previous few battles with Xiao He, the suckers didn't actually display her true combat strength. The narrator's words made him think of a way to prolong his stay in the future dream. That was to help the suckers find food that could heal her injuries. Maybe the suckers could even defeat Xiao He after recovering their combat strength. Without Xiao He's pursuit, it was equivalent to having unlimited time to stay in the future dream. Even if he didn't have access to the database, he could still make himself stronger by hunting monsters. Even if the suckers couldn't defeat Xiao He, she could prolong the time he could stay in the dream after her combat strength had increased. Thanks for the reminder. Maybe I could try. You're welcome. Just trust me. I won't harm you. After all, even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. Get lost. Digging up the soil, it was just as the narrator said. There was a fiery red fruit growing on the roots of the gray plant. He broke off the roots and took the fruit. When the roots broke off, it immediately emitted a rich fragrance and a milky white juice flowed out. Is this fruit effective for me? He couldn't help but ask curiously. Yes, it can strengthen your sex drive. It's very effective. Hearing this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. In the future dream, he hadn't grown that thing yet. Obviously, the narrator had told him in a roundabout way that it didn't have any effect. He took a deep breath of the sweet fragrance in the air and immediately continued to walk to the east. Along the way, the narrator gave him several more instructions and allowed him to find 3 more spiritual plants. In the real world, spiritual plants, spiritual ores, and other special products could only be found in areas rich in spiritual energy. In the future world, such plants seemed to be everywhere. During this time, he realized that the narrator seemed to have the ability to explore perception. Because the narrator could always perceive things within a certain distance and analyze the specific ability and effect of the object. He only speculated and asked the narrator, but it didn't answer. He continued to walk east. It was slightly inconvenient to carry the spiritual plants with him, but he didn't choose to let them go. These spiritual plants were the nutrients for the suckers to become stronger and also the guarantee that he could prolong the time he could stay in the future dream. Maybe you need a special ability that can store things. What? Hearing the narrator's reminder, Feng Qi, who was holding the red fruit in his left hand and the 3 spiritual plants in his right hand, couldn't help but ask curiously. Prefix title, space. After obtaining it, you can open up a small space in your body. It can be used for storage and transportation. It's a good ability for home travel, murder, and arson. There's such an ability? How do I get it? What kind of domain creature do I need to hunt? He quickly asked. I don't know. I'm just a merciless fishing robot. Feng Qi, ***********, realizing that the narrator was fishing again, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. What was certain was that since the narrator said there was such an ability, then it definitely existed. Perhaps the narrator felt that with his current ability, he couldn't hunt a domain creature that could give him the title of space, so it didn't reveal this information. The narrator's words made him look forward to the space ability. But what he wanted more was the ability to have unlimited memory. After obtaining this ability, the benefits of each time he entered the future dream would be greatly increased, and he could also begin to plan for the development of psionic technology. Now, the various domain creatures in the future dream were like an ability-blind box in his eyes. After killing them, he could obtain a prefix title related to the characteristics of the domain creature and obtain this ability. Compared to training in reality, this method of becoming stronger was like cheating. While chatting with the narrator from time to time, he crossed 3 blocks and arrived at the location of the abandoned residential area. From afar, the abandoned residential area was completely different from what he remembered. To be more precise, this was no longer a residential area, but a hospital, but it was still dilapidated. The outer layer of the building had peeled off and was covered with moss and vines. The red and white cross sign at the top hung upside down, connected to the rusty cable, as if it would fall off at any time. Before stepping into the abandoned residential area, he began to observe the surroundings. The butterfly effect caused some changes to the future in every dream. Perhaps the suction cup wouldn't be here this time. Therefore, it was better to be vigilant. After confirming that the surroundings were safe, he stepped into the abandoned hospital. The hospital was already a world of plants. On the floor, the walls, the ceiling, all kinds of plants grew wildly, occupying every area in sight. As he explored along the corridors of the abandoned hospital, he constantly scanned his surroundings and was prepared to escape at any time. After more than 10 minutes, he was prepared to go up to the 2nd floor to continue his exploration. At this moment, the narrator's voice sounded in his mind. "Turn your head and look at the 10 o'clock direction. The ground about 3 meters away seems to be different." Hearing the narrator's reminder, he didn't hesitate and immediately walked to the location mentioned by the narrator. Then, he punched the ground with all his might. Gotcha! The ground cracked, revealing the rusty black metal underneath. With doubts, he pulled out the weeds around him and then pushed the broken stones away. What appeared before him was a black metal door. There was a green light flashing in the center of the door's surface. Realizing that there was a space underground that was similar to the shelter, he scanned his surroundings but didn't find any equipment that could detect blood dripping. Therefore, he swung his fist and punched the door twice, causing him to grimace in pain. The material used to create this door was similar to the black stone tablet in Star City Sanctuary. With his current strength, he couldn't destroy it at all. "Narrator, what's down there?" "I don't know." Feng Qi was speechless. With doubts in his heart, he didn't insist and decisively chose to give up. However, just as he was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly had an idea. He remembered something. In the previous few times he entered the future dream, the suckers would always appear near this area. He didn't think much about it. However, after entering the future dream, he knew that Vivian might have some kind of connection with the suckers. It was even possible that the suckers were replicated and cultivated by Vivian using Mu Qing's genes and rune crystals. Therefore, the Scarlet Institute's base was most likely the birthplace of the suckers. Now that human civilization had ended, the suckers were still wandering around this area. Could it be that the underground base of the Scarlet Institute was right below the Black Door? That was where the suckers were first born. Narrator, is that possible? We can't rule out this possibility, but you can't verify it because you can't open this door. That's not necessarily true. As long as I have a weapon, I'll be like a god. There's no defense that I can't break. Don't embarrass yourself. You can do it without the suckers. You're just a pendant that's responsible for throwing things. Chapter 85. Walking through the overgrown corridor, Feng Qi arrived at the 2nd floor of the abandoned hospital. However, after searching for a while, he still could not find the sucker. Therefore, he continued to go up to the 3rd floor. Due to the passage of time, the cracked walkway could no longer bear his weight. After taking a few steps on the 3rd floor, the ground suddenly collapsed. He returned to the 2nd floor and then landed on the 1st floor. Amidst the billowing smoke, he spat out the dust in his mouth and stood up helplessly. Usually, when he approached this area, the sucker would automatically come to him. However, this time, he could not find the sucker. Therefore, he was certain that the sucker was no longer here. Without the protective sucker, his safety was no longer guaranteed. As for where the sucker had gone, He thought of a place where the sucker would often go. I think so too. The sucker must have gone to your grave to cry. Feng Qi was speechless. As he left the abandoned hospital, he did not go straight to find the sucker. After estimating the time, he realized that Xiaohei was very close to his location. He had to find an opponent for it. Otherwise, before he could find the sucker, Xiaohei might catch up to him. Thinking of this, he scanned his surroundings and finally locked onto a tall building not far away. He arrived at the bottom of the building and climbed up skillfully. It did not take him long to reach the top of the building. Looking to the west, he began to search for Xiaohei. Just as he thought, Xiaohei had already entered the abandoned city and was quickly heading toward his location. He could not help but wonder if there was a tracking device on his body. Otherwise, how could Xiaohei always pinpoint his location so accurately? Thinking of this, he began to check his body. After checking the surface of his body, he confirmed that there was no problem. Therefore, he reached his hand into the shrunken and decayed organ in his chest. He first reached for the liver. However, he did not expect that with just a gentle grab, the liver would be plucked out. Should I just laugh or be a little more reserved? Forget it. I can't hold it in anymore. Ha ha ha. Feng Qi was speechless. While feeling helpless, he simply threw the liver in his hand down the building. These shriveled and decayed organs in his body were just decorations at this stage. They were of no use at all. In order to find out if there was a tracking device in his body, he then removed his rotten stomach, spleen, gallbladder, and other organs and threw them down the building. As for the heart, he did not touch it. Although the heart in his body had also withered and decayed, he could still feel that this heart was still beating weakly. Perhaps it was an organ necessary to maintain the state of the living dead, so he could not move it. Looking at the empty chest cavity, he casually placed the 3 spirit plants in his hand into it. Wow, it's quite suitable for storing spiritual plants. It just so happens that it's stuck and won't fall off. It's just that it can't store fruits. They'll easily leak out when it's bumpy. Idiot! Feng Qi was speechless. After putting the Ling plant in place, he looked again at the black dot that was quickly approaching from the distance. To be on the safe side, he began to look for opponents for Xiaohei nearby to help him delay his escape. As he scanned the area, he did not find any powerful crimson eyes. Instead, he saw a domain creature that was black all over and as fat as a cow not far away. Narrator, is it okay? How long can it last? Trash that can be killed in seconds. Trash, change it. Hearing the narrator's answer, he immediately turned his gaze to the right side of the building. There was a strange tree that was twisting and dancing. What about this one? Can't last more than a few rounds. Trash, change it. Just as he thought, the narrator had the ability to perceive and observe. It could help him analyze the general ability of the domain creature. After selecting a few targets, he turned his gaze to a strange-looking domain creature nearby. This domain creature's face was like a goat's skull. There was a crimson rune crystal embedded in its forehead. It walked upright like a human and was heading towards his location from the south. What about this one? Can it withstand Xiaohei's vicious beatings? This one is okay. Although its racial talent is not as strong as the eye's psychokinesis, its ability to withstand beatings is much stronger than the eye. I'll take it. Okay. After confirming Xiaohei's location again, he immediately climbed down the building and found a place to hide nearby. As he waited, the sheep-headed domain creature appeared in his sight. This domain creature's appearance was very similar to the demons described in the Bible. It had the head of an antelope, the body of a human, the lower body of a deer, the hooves of a goat, and a scorpion tail on its back. There was a green flame burning at the tip of its poisonous hook. When it got closer, Feng Qi jumped out of his hiding place. After landing, he raised his middle finger at the sheep-headed demon in the distance. Then, he decisively turned around and ran in the direction of Xiaohei. However, after running for some distance, he realized that the sheep-headed demon did not chase after him. Instead, it stood in the same spot and watched him from afar. Feng Qi was speechless. After waiting for a few seconds, he realized that the sheep-headed demon still had no intention of chasing after him. So, he boldly took a few steps closer to the sheep-headed demon. Narrator, why isn't this thing chasing after me? Not sure. Maybe it's full? Feng Qi was speechless. At that moment, Xiao He was getting closer to his location. So, he boldly took a few steps closer to the sheep-headed demon. Then he picked up a piece of rock from the ground and threw it at the sheep-headed demon's head. The rock accurately hit the sheep-headed demon's head. However, to his disappointment, the sheep-headed demon still stood in the same spot and completely ignored his provocation. The domain creatures that he had encountered before did not even need him to say anything before they chased after him. However, it was the first time that he had encountered something like the sheep-headed demon, which did not react even after throwing a rock at its face. Just as he was about to change his method of provocation, the narrator's voice rang in his mind. The black grandson is here. Hurry. Hearing the narrator's prompt, his heart tightened. He turned around and saw Xiao He, who was shrouded in black fog, floating quickly from afar. He made up his mind and immediately ran toward the sheep-headed demon. At that moment, the sheep-headed demon also noticed Xiao He. Its scorpion tail suddenly stood up as if it was warning Xiao He. Then, a dark green flame ignited in its head. This flame quickly spread throughout its body. When the sheep-headed demon's hooves were also ignited, it raised its head and let out a hoarse roar. Seeing this scene, Feng Qi was touched. He knew that the long-awaited battle was coming. As expected, when these domain creatures saw Xiao He, it was as if they were possessed by Brother Flathead. Next, it would be the time for the sheep-headed demon and Xiao He to fight to the death. Brother Sheep-headed, it's up to you now. Mother Kerr. While he was dumbfounded, the sheep-headed demon suddenly turned around and ran at a speed faster than him, leaving a trail of burning hoof prints behind it. Damn, I'm also dumbfounded. While running, Feng Qi could not help but grit his teeth and say, "Why is the target you chose so unreliable? I only saw its ability information. How would I know that this thing is so cowardly? However, looking at it, it should be an intelligent domain creature." At that moment, Xiao He was getting closer and closer. With his movement speed, he could not keep up. At this moment, he suddenly had an idea. There was a strange tree up ahead in this direction. Although this strange tree's combat power was not strong, it could help him hold on for a while. This way, he would be able to escape. In order to escape, he unleashed all his potential and ran desperately in the direction of the strange tree. When Xiao He was only about 10 meters away from him, he finally arrived at the strange tree's territory. Noticing the intruder, the strange tree twisted its body and controlled its branches to quickly sweep toward him. Then, its body was bound by the branches, but it was quickly released. Then, all the branches turned around and swept toward Xiao He, who was behind it. Seeing this, Feng Qi heaved a sigh of relief. Taking advantage of the conflict between the strange tree and Xiao He, he took the opportunity to decisively run to the other side. When he turned back, he saw an extremely shocking scene. Xiao He, who was bound by the branches, suddenly turned into mist and spread out. Then, this black mist quickly ate the branches and pushed forward at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of the strange tree. Then, the black mist spread again and enveloped the strange tree. Under Xiao He's gnawing, the strange tree quickly melted like ice cream under the hot sun. Seeing this, he could not help but shiver and quickly quicken his pace. At that moment, the sheep-headed demon that was running in front was long gone. He looked down on the sheep-headed domain creature that had a strong appearance, but was cowardly on the inside. It was too cowardly. My bad. I didn't expect this thing to be more cowardly than you. I'm a coward? If it weren't for the fact that my life is too valuable, I would turn back and fight Xiao He for 300 rounds. Feng Qi could not help but retort. 300 rounds? Half a round at most. I advise you to be more aware. Feng Qi was speechless. The strange tree could not hold on for long. While talking to the narrator, he did not stop running. While running, he kept looking around, hoping that a brave domain creature would come out and save him. As he continued running, he saw a strange building in front of him. This building was combined with an abandoned modern building. Its surface was covered with wriggling blood-colored moss. It repaired the broken parts of the dilapidated building and supported the building from collapsing. At the same time, he saw the sheep-headed demon quickly climb up the building from afar. Then, it went into a wriggling hole in the center of the building. "You're the one." Realizing that this was most likely the sheep-headed demon's lair, he decided to follow it in. Doing so might give him a chance of survival. If he continued to run outside, he would only die. As he ran, Xiao Hei's figure appeared behind him again. At that moment, Feng Qi, who had already arrived at the strange building, jumped up, grabbed the flesh moss, and climbed up with all his might. The flesh moss seemed to have been activated. The small tentacles on the surface wriggled and started to pull at his body, making it harder for him to climb. After some effort, he finally arrived at the wriggling entrance. At that moment, Xiao Hei was less than 30 meters away from him. Without hesitation, he plunged into the blood-colored hole and went straight inside. The tunnel and the hole seemed to have a life of its own. It kept wriggling. Walking inside, it was as if he had entered the body of some kind of creature. It was really strange. He jogged forward and turned right at the end. What appeared before him was a field the size of a basketball court. A group of sheep-headed demons were kneeling on the ground. They were worshipping a strange statue made of flesh and blood. At that moment, Xiao Hei's figure appeared behind him. Waves of cold aura assaulted him. Feng Qi did not care too much. He immediately rushed toward the sheep-headed demons. Seeing Xiao Hei's figure, the sheep-headed demons were very agitated. Flames started to burn on the surface of their bodies. Feng Qi originally thought that he would be the first target of the sheep-headed demons. He did not expect that they would choose to attack Xiao Hei first. When the battle broke out, Feng Qi was forced to hide in a corner. He was forced to watch the battle and wait for an opportunity to run out of the entrance. While watching the battle, his eyes swept across the flesh and blood statue not far away. This flesh and blood statue was made of an unknown material. Its surface sometimes had a metallic luster. Other times, it wriggled like flesh and blood, as if it had a life of its own. He also noticed that the forehead of this flesh and blood statue was embedded with a rune crystal that was glowing with a scarlet halo. Discovered something good. This statue has a life of its own. Kill it. At that moment, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. Begging for monthly votes, there's a third update tonight. I'll continue to write 10,000 words today. Chapter 86. After listening to the narrator's hint, Feng Qi's eyes focused on the mysterious statue not far away. The statue was about a meter tall and had a similar appearance to the sheep-headed demons. There was a hexagram carved on its forehead, and a blood-colored rune crystal was embedded in the center. The narrator would not give any meaningless hints. It was obvious that killing the life in the statue would give him unexpected abilities. Before he acted, he glanced at the entrance. Xiao Hei had already started fighting with the sheep-headed demons. Xiao Hei's scariest part was its almost indestructible body. The parts that were attacked would instantly vaporize and then regenerate to its original state. It was invincible against any opponent. He thought that Xiao Hei's ability was to counter physical damage. However, now that he saw Xiao Hei's vaporized body easily absorbing the flames that the sheep-headed demon spat out, he realized how terrifying Xiao Hei was. No matter what kind of damage it was, Xiao Hei had the ability to deal with it. Such a powerful ability made his scalp tingle. He could not find any way to counter it. While the sheep-headed demons were attacking Xiao Hei, he tiptoed toward the mysterious statue. When he arrived in front of the statue, he took a deep breath and suddenly threw a punch at the statue's head. His fist collided with the rune crystal on the statue's forehead. There were blood-colored ripples on the statue's surface. Not only did the punch not break the mysterious statue, but the explosive force from the statue made him take a few steps back. Unwilling to give up, he went forward again and threw a punch at the statue's head. This time, before his fist could get close to the statue, he felt a transparent barrier in front of the statue. It blocked his fist from coming in contact with the statue. At the same time, the statue suddenly opened its eyes. Its eyes were glowing red. The metallic luster on its surface dissipated and turned into a blood-colored muscle stripe. Feng Qi was dumbfounded when he saw that. He felt that he might have been tricked by the narrator. It was obvious that he had kicked an iron plate. However, just as he was about to run away, the statue seemed to have been forcefully shut down. The red light in its eyes dissipated and the metallic luster appeared on its surface again. Please maintain your trust in me. After all, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. I will not harm you. Feng Qi was speechless. What do we do now? Continue to attack it. The life within this statue is extremely weak. It can't attack you at all. Hearing this, he immediately clenched his teeth and punched the mysterious statue again. Once, twice, thrice. Under its violent swings, the newly grown muscles on his right arm were shattered, revealing his white bones. Even though he felt the pain, he did not stop and continued to throw punches with all his might. Finally, a crack appeared on the surface of the mysterious statue. Then, the crack quickly spread throughout the statue, and the entire statue collapsed. What appeared in front of him was a blood-red ball of flesh, beating like a heart. Through the crisscrossing blood vessels, he could vaguely see a sleeping figure curled up in the ball of flesh. Without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed the bloody ball of flesh in his hand. Then he squeezed it hard. The meatball shattered, and the transparent liquid inside splashed all over his face. The little life inside also twisted its body and let out a tender cry. Its voice was very weak. It was completely covered by the commotion caused by the fight between Xiao He and the sheep-headed demon. Glancing at the sheep-headed demons that were still attacking Xiao He, Feng Qi did not hesitate. Once again, he squeezed hard and crushed the blood-red life into a pulp, killing the life of this special domain creature. Suddenly, a cloud of blood-red mist appeared from the little life and entered his body. After absorbing this cloud of blood, he felt as if he had drunk a mouthful of iced happy drink on a hot summer day. He felt comfortable all over. Then, the flesh on the surface of his body grew rapidly. The muscles that had been shattered were reorganized in the pulsation of the flesh. He could clearly feel that his strength was changing. Along with the changes in his body, he realized that the shriveled and decayed heart in his body seemed to be activated. The decayed gray on the surface gradually turned into a lively pink, and the pulsation became more powerful. Summoning the attribute panel, he realized that he had obtained another prefix title. Blood Source, Nightmare, Toughness, Level 2, Robust, Living Dead. Feng Qi, Strength Level. Iron, Lower Level Prefix Title. Robust, increases physical strength by 20%, strengthens self-recovery ability. Toughness Level 3, increases muscle toughness by 3%. Nightmare, unupgradable prefix title, can invade the consciousness and read the contents of the target's memory. The specific effect depends on the strength of the user's spiritual force. The ability of the prefix title can be upgraded as the user's spiritual force increases. Blood Source, unupgradable prefix title, condenses a blood core in the heart, greatly increasing the efficiency of the heart. This ability can also be released on its own, instantly draining the blood core's energy and the body's blood to strengthen the user, increasing the user's fighting strength. This ability will be strengthened as the body's blood increases. Bloodline. Human, primary, bloodline evolution points. 2351000 prefix, title milestone frowny face robust, upgradable. Second milestone progress. 37%, toughness level 3. Upgradable 51%. This prefix title's ability was different from the other prefix titles he had obtained before. Robust and toughness were passive abilities. Nightmare needed to be released on its own, while Blood Source could be released on its own. Along with the pulsation of his heart, he could feel the surging vitality in his body. Using his consciousness to gently guide it, his heart would suddenly beat faster, just like stepping on the gas pedal while driving. While trying, his consciousness suddenly pierced into his heart. In that instant, an inconceivable scene occurred. His heartbeat instantly increased by 3 times, and it was still accelerating. The surging vitality was extracted from his heart and spread throughout his body. The flesh on the surface of his body crazily grew under the nourishment of this energy. In the blink of an eye, Feng-Chi had turned from a skeleton to a 2-meter-tall humanoid monster with muscles all over his body. When he clenched his fist, he could clearly feel the surging power in his body. Amazing, you directly evolved into a muscle tyrant. This ability really suits you. Hearing the narrator's ridicule, he could not help but roll his eyes. At the same time, he could feel the blood energy in his body quickly depleting. Realizing that he would not be able to maintain this state for long, he turned his head to look at the entrance and decided to use this opportunity to rush out. After making up his mind, he took a deep breath and rushed toward the entrance. The sudden burst of power under his feet created a deep pit on the ground. His body shot forward like a cannonball, and every step he took sent his body flying a few meters away. Just as he was about to step into the bloody hole, a sheep-headed demon was sent flying by Xiao He. It fell in front of him and blocked his way. F***CKU. Feng-Chi immediately kicked the sheep-headed demon away, and the muscles on his right leg instantly solidified. He then jumped into the bloody hole. If he continued to stay here, he would die if Xiao He won, and he would also die if Xiao He lost. Leaving while he was in his transformed state was the wisest choice. He ran along the bloody tunnel and finally walked out of the bloody hole. The bloody hole was about 10 meters above the ground, but he did not hesitate and immediately jumped down. His body kept accelerating as he fell, and finally, he slammed into the ground. Immediately, gravel flew everywhere, and a 2-meter-wide pit full of cracks formed under his feet. However, Feng-Chi, who was in his blood essence state, did not feel any discomfort and landed steadily. Oh wow, very strong. Sure enough, the big muscle form is the most suitable form for you. Evolve in this direction in the future. He could not help but roll his eyes when he heard the narrator's ridicule. Compared to the incubus ability that he did not know how to use, he had already mastered the method of using blood essence after trying it out. Realizing that he had obtained a very good enhanced ability, he was elated. He looked up at the bloody moon in the sky, and after confirming his location, he decisively walked towards the east. In his blood essence state, his strength and speed were doubled, and even his body surface defense was greatly enhanced. The wind whistled in his ears as he ran, and every step he took created a pit on the ground. However, this state did not last long. Soon, the muscles on his body began to disintegrate and turn into a bloody mist that dissipated with the wind. He also returned to normal from his muscle man state. When the blood essence state completely disappeared, a sense of weakness arose spontaneously. It was not that he became weak after leaving the blood essence state. After all, the main consumption of the blood essence state came from the blood core in his heart, and it had nothing to do with his body. He was just used to the strength of the blood essence state, so he was not used to the sudden disappearance of the ability. I feel like my body has been hollowed out. It's a little uncomfortable. TSK, 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 kidney deficiency at such a young age. Embarrassing. Shut up. I wake up every day with a pillar supporting the sky. He could not help but stare at the narrator's ridicule. Where's the picture? Seeing is believing. Hearing is false. Feng-Chi was speechless. I suddenly thought of a question. The ability you obtained in the future dream can be brought back to reality. In other words, you can also use the blood origin ability in reality. If you use this ability in reality, what will happen to you? Hearing this, he could not help but be stunned. After thinking carefully, he could not help but shiver, and a chill rose from the bottom of his heart. The characteristic of the blood essence ability was that it extracted the power of the blood core in the heart, allowing his body to be enhanced instantly. After using the blood core ability, his heart became shriveled and decayed again. Even the muscle stripes on his body dissipated after the enhancement. According to the narrator, if this ability was used in reality, there might be irreversible consequences. In reality, he would definitely be drained in an instant. After a short period of strength, he would become like the living dead in the future dream, and he might even lose his life. In the future dream, he only needed a skeleton to survive, but that was not necessarily the case in reality. Narrator, if I enter the living dead state in reality, will I die? That's a good question. I can only tell you that the truth is always obtained through practice. So, do you want to give it a try? What if you don't die? What if I die? I'll let the suckers come and cry for you. Feng Qi was speechless. While he gave the narrator the middle finger in his heart, he had a guess. Logically speaking, reality and the future dream corresponded. If he became stronger in the future dream, he would also receive synchronized feedback in reality. Therefore, after using the blood essence ability and being drained, he should not die. At the same time, there was another point that proved that his body in reality was very special. He could no longer rely on cultivation to become stronger. He could only increase his strength by killing in the future dream. This indirectly proved that his body in reality was already connected to the future dream. Reading 10,000 books is not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. No matter how many ideas you have, it's better to put them into practice. Warrior, give it a try. Feng Qi was speechless. Although the theory proved that it was possible, he had no intention of giving it a try. If his idea was wrong, he would die on the spot after the blood essence ability ended. After looking up at the blood moon, he continued to head east. Along the way, he scanned his surroundings, appearing very vigilant. Before he found the protective suckers, he did not dare to be reckless anymore. After all, there was still a lot of information in the future database that he had not checked. He needed time, and the suckers were his guarantee for staying here. Chapter 87. The blood moon hung high in the sky, and the cold wind howled. There was no poetry or distance in the world of the future dream. There was only endless silence and distorted creatures in every corner of the world. After leaving his bloodline state, Feng Qi followed the direction in his memory and headed toward his future tomb. Everything he saw along the way was a scene of ruin. After staying in such a depressing environment for so long, even the always optimistic Feng Qi felt a little heavy. However, he did not feel depressed, nor could he be depressed. Only confidence and strength could allow him to overcome all obstacles until the day this broken world was reborn. Fortunately, there was always the narrator accompanying him, so he did not feel lonely. Walking on the streets filled with rubble and messy building debris, his eyes were always wandering and paying attention to the movements around him. Even the slightest movement would alert him. Narrator, don't you have the ability to see the situation around you? Why don't you observe and inform me if anything happens? You want to be lazy, but I don't want to be lazy. How long have we known each other? You want to be a capitalist and squeeze me dry? Hitue. Feng Qi was speechless. Aren't you a spiritual body? You shouldn't feel physical fatigue. Feng Qi tried to explain. Your words remind me of my past memories. Actually, we've known each other for a long time. Hearing the narrator's answer, Feng Qi was confused. He immediately asked, when did we know each other? Didn't we only know each other after entering the future dream? Then you're wrong. We've known each other much earlier than this. He vaguely felt that the narrator seemed to be telling him a big secret, so he asked, tell me in detail. As for the specific time, it's probably more than 1,000 years ago. It was a sunny autumn. You ran with me in the wind and left a bite mark on my leg. Right? I was called Lu Dongbin at that time. Do you still remember your name before you reincarnated? Feng Qi listened to the narrator seriously, and his expression gradually became ferocious. He finally understood that the narrator was telling him in a roundabout way that he was a dog. Hey, yes, you're the Ah Huang that bit me. You were chasing me at 20 miles per hour. Shut up, Feng Qi said angrily. Sometimes, he was quite touched by the accompaniment and guidance of the narrator. But most of the time, the narrator's sweet words made him angrier and angrier. Gradually, his mental state exploded. As they continued forward, the number of weeds in the vicinity increased. This made him realize that he was not far from his destination. What he was most worried about now was that the sucker would not be near his future grave. Without the sucker, his plan to delay Xiao He would be for naught. After moving forward for a while, he scanned his surroundings and began to look for the narrator. At this moment, a shadow quickly enveloped them from afar. Then the entire world became gloomy. He looked up and saw an extremely shocking scene. An incomparably large and ferocious beast streaked across the sky. It had a pair of wings on its back and a pair of large green eyes. The scales on the surface of its body refracted gorgeous colors, even though there was no light. Every time it flapped its wings, a gust of wind would rise from the ground. Like the king of the sky, it looked down on all life on the ground and flew toward the west where the dark clouds covered the sky. At this moment, the sky behemoth opened its mouth and roared. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that shook the earth. Turning his head in the direction of the ferocious behemoth, he vaguely saw a mountain-like figure looming in the dark clouds amidst the flashes of lightning and thunder. Then, the ferocious behemoth also rushed into the dark clouds. The two figures seemed to be fighting. Accompanied by lightning and thunder, their figures appeared in the dark clouds from time to time and engaged in a fierce battle. F***CK. This is also a territory creature? Feng Qi could not help but be stunned. They only look strong. In fact, they are stronger than you think. Otherwise, why do you think a territory creature can eventually take over the entire world? If this thing fought with Mu Qing, who would win? Then you're underestimating humans. Although I've never seen Mu Qing at her peak, according to the information in the database, Mu Qing could kill 2 sky behemoths with such strength with her eyes closed. One for barbecue, and the other for soup. Then how much of this sky behemoth strength can I reach now? Feng Qi asked curiously. I told you to have some self-awareness. Why didn't you listen? How much? You can fight with the worm in its stomach for 300 rounds and then sacrifice yourself. Feng Qi was speechless. Don't think too much. You have to take one bite at a time. The future is long. These seemingly terrifying creatures are far from your end. One day, you will stand at the true peak. When that time comes, I will definitely pull you out of your body and flick your head 1,000 times. Rebound. Super rebound. Idiot. He looked at the distant west again. That strange world covered by dark clouds. He finally understood why the narrator told him to go east. It was because the domain behemoths he would encounter in other directions might be far more terrifying than he imagined. However, he didn't feel depressed at all. Instead, he grinned. The stronger the domain behemoth was, the stronger the title and ability he would receive after killing it. There was nothing to be afraid of. While chatting, he walked for a while and came to the area in his memory. The location of the graveyard might have changed, but he was roughly sure that it was nearby because there were many buildings that could be used as reference. After stopping, he looked around and began to look for the sucker. After looking around, he continued to walk forward without finding the sucker. Then, he stopped and continued to search. There were weeds nearby, and some of them were taller than him. Therefore, it was extremely difficult to search. After walking for a while, the narrator's voice sounded in his mind. Turn your head and look in the direction of 9 o'clock. About 20 meters away, there is a little cutie squatting in the grass. Quickly go and pick her up. Hearing the narrator's reminder, he didn't hesitate and immediately turned to walk in that direction. After walking for about 20 meters, he parted the weeds and found the sucker with a head full of white hair kneeling on the ground with lifeless eyes. There was a bright red flower in front of her. She was staring blankly at the soil in front of her. Seeing this scene, Feng Qi felt an inexplicable heartache. Although it's heartache, you didn't hesitate to throw it away when it's time. As expected of you. Feng Qi. He squatted down beside the sucker and reached out to rub the sucker's head. I'm back. The sucker didn't seem to hear what he said. She continued to stare at the soil without even blinking. Feeling helpless, he reached out to pick her up, intending to carry her away. However, to his surprise, the sucker broke free from his hands like a loach and slid to the ground. With a thud, she knelt on the ground again. Feng Qi. He squatted down and rubbed the sucker's head again. He began to think about how to take the sucker away. Usually, the sucker would take the initiative to follow him. With his strength, it was obviously impossible for him to forcefully take the sucker away. As he pondered, his gaze turned to the soil in front of the sucker. Good lad. I'm afraid I'm going to dig my own grave again, right? Feng Qi, just as the narrator said, he did have such an idea. The main reason he was able to take the sucker away last time was because he passed the harmonica in the graveyard to the sucker. After taking the harmonica, the sucker didn't resist and was taken away by him. Therefore, he wanted to try again. After all, staying here was a complete waste of precious time. He didn't know when the sucker would follow him. Why don't I give it a try? Then let's give it a try. After all, you're already miserable enough in the future. It doesn't matter if you're even more miserable. However, remember to kowtow to yourself a few times after you're done digging. Otherwise, you'll be too much of a jerk. Feng Qi, since the narrator thought it was feasible, he began to dig the soil. As he dug the soil with both hands, he felt very strange. He felt a little upset. In the future, he worked hard to save the world. However, before he died, he became a traitor to humanity and was scolded by the world. Now, even after death, he couldn't rest in peace and had to be dug out of the soil by himself. Don't think too much. If you have a soul in the future, he might be nearby urging you to dig quickly and not waste time. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't touch the real thing, he would definitely rush to dig faster than you. At the same time, he would also scold you, "You dilly-dallying stupid thing, scram and let me do it." Feng Qi, the narrator's words made the worries in his heart disappear. He even wanted to give the narrator the middle finger. What did he mean by rushing to dig? Was this something a human would say? I'm indeed not a human, but look at yourself. Which part of you looks like a human? He looked down at his skeleton and didn't say anything else. He continued digging. While Feng Qi was digging, the sucker continued to kneel on the ground and look at the soil as if he was mourning. After digging for more than a meter, when his fingers touched a hard object, he realized that he had dug. He continued digging for a distance and picked up the metal box from the soil. However, this time he didn't open it. Instead, he put it aside. Just as he thought, the silver-white harmonica was buried under the metal box. Wait, I thought a question. Why is the harmonica under the urn? Does that mean that Mu Qing also dug your urn out of the soil? Feng Qi. Ignoring the narrator's wild thoughts, he took the silver-white harmonica out of the soil. This harmonica was made of special materials in the field. After the baptism of time, it only lost its luster, but there were no traces of rust. After removing the soil from the surface of the harmonica, he put it aside and solemnly buried his urn in the soil again. Finally, he covered it with the surrounding soil. Brother, it's time to kowtow. You have to have a bottom line. If you don't kowtow a few times, it won't be right. I can't be bothered with you. He picked the leaves of the nearby plants and wiped the harmonica again. He squatted down beside the sucker, rubbed her little head, and handed the harmonica to her. Just as he expected, the sucker's eyes lit up when she saw the silver-white harmonica. She reached out and took the silver-white harmonica. Do you know how to play it? Feng Qi asked with a smile. Hearing his question, the sucker actually put the harmonica to her mouth and played it. She didn't resist when he picked her up again. She realized that the sucker could follow her, so she carried the sucker on her shoulder and walked toward the Star City Sanctuary. Along the way, the sucker became more and more proficient at playing the harmonica. The deep melody and the fast and slow rhythm seemed to be telling a story about longing. Feng Qi's emotions were also affected by the melody. What's the name of this song? He asked casually, but he didn't expect the narrator to stop playing and answer with a young voice. Longing, traveling, mountains, west, Ku. When he heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he smiled and rubbed the sucker's little head. The melodious melody drifted away with the wind. The two figures walked further and further away in the melody and gradually disappeared at the end. Chapter 88. Feng Qi strode along the route to Star City Sanctuary. Although the surrounding environment had changed a little under the influence of the butterfly effect, he could still determine the general direction through the blood moon in the sky and the buildings in the distance so that he would not get lost. At this moment, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. Your weapon is very hungry and wants to eat to replenish its energy. Otherwise, it will go on strike. The prompt from the narrator stunned him. He then realized that the 3 spiritual plants he had picked for the sucker were still stored in his body and had not been used. As for the fiery red fruit, it had disappeared when he was being chased by Xiao He. He did not know where it had fallen. He took out the 3 spiritual plants stuck in his chest and reached out to the mouth of the sucker lying on his left arm. The sucker subconsciously sniffed and then opened its mouth to eat the spiritual plants. Does it taste good? Looking at the sucker, munching on the spiritual plants, he asked with a smile. However, the sucker ignored him. Its bulging cheeks were very chewy as it ate. It chewed and swallowed the 3 spiritual plants in a few bites. Its powerful digestive ability instantly crushed the spiritual plants that it had swallowed and turned them into energy that surged around its body. The rune crystal on the sucker's left arm flickered at this moment. Seeing this scene, he felt that his guess was right. The sucker, which had inherited Mu Qing's ability, could rely on eating to repair its body and strengthen itself. As long as it continued to find materials that contained energy for the sucker's injuries would quickly recover during this period. Thinking of this, a guess appeared in his mind, so he immediately asked, "Narrator, do you think the sucker can have the same effect as the spiritual plants when it eats domain creatures? As long as its digestive ability is good, it can absorb energy from eating special ores that contain spirit energy." The narrator's answer gave him a new idea. In addition to looking for spiritual plants, he could bring the sucker to hunt domain creatures. When the time came, he would complete the last hit and absorb the vitality, gain the ability, and then use the sucker to devour the body of the domain creature to heal its injuries. The only problem was that the sucker would only stop once it killed the domain creature. It would not be easy for him to complete the last hit. "Sucker, can you understand me? Later, when we go to hunt domain creatures, you have to fight until your HP is low while I'm still alive, understand?" When the sucker heard this, it slowly leaned its head on his arm and closed its eyes. "The sucker says that you're right, but I'm not listening at all." Feng Qi was speechless. He looked up at the blood moon and continued on his way. Right now, Xiaohe was still fighting with the sheep-headed demon, so he shouldn't be able to come over for the time being. Therefore, he still had time to increase the strength of the suckers. The closer he got to the Star City Sanctuary, the lower the chances of encountering a domain creature. In order to attract the attention of the domain creatures along the way, he sang at the top of his lungs. He wanted to use his voice to attract the domain creatures. With the suction cup in his hand, he had nothing to fear. He had been in the future dreamscape for a long time, but he had never been so arrogant. This is called a dog relying on its master's power. You're becoming more and more like Ah Huang from 1,000 years ago. The effects of Granny Meng's soup seem to be wearing off. Your original body is about to awaken. Feng Qi was speechless. Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll pull you out of my body and flick your head 1,000 times. You discovered a yellow substance about 5 meters in front of you to your right. Hearing the reminder from the narrator, Feng Qi, who was flustered and exasperated, was stunned. He immediately looked at the yellow substance not far away. He came in front of the substance and squatted down to observe. "What's this? Smell it and see if it's to your taste." When he heard this, he suddenly realized the problem. His expression suddenly became very unpleasant. He originally thought that the narrator had found something good, but he didn't expect it to be a trap. He even trusted it so much that he almost stepped into it. Come out. We have to fight today. Let's switch to scolding each other. I'm not very good at fighting. Scolding each other is my strength. It's better to use your strength to attack your opponent's weakness." Feng Qi was speechless. Just as he was about to scold, the weeds in front of him to his right shook as if some creature was rapidly approaching. Seeing this, he didn't hesitate to raise the sucker to his chest. Protective sucker has been equipped. Entering combat mode. The narrator added a voice at the right time. While waiting, a 2-meter-tall arthropod jumped out of the grass and pounced straight at him. Its appearance looked like a praying mantis. Its entire body glowed with a dark green luster. Its pair of huge forelimbs were like 2 large scythes, shining with a sharp light. Its back was also covered with a layer of grayish-white substance. It looked very ferocious. Before its figure arrived, a gust of wind blew in his face. Its shining forelimbs went straight for Feng Qi's head. At this moment, the sucker suddenly opened her eyes. Dots of starlight appeared in her eyes. In an instant, It was as if the Milky Way was rotating in her eyes, blooming with a brilliant brilliance. Seeing this, Feng-Chi decisively threw the sucker at the praying mantis. A crystalline jade color flowed on the surface of the sucker. The praying mantis slashed at the surface of the sucker, but it didn't even scratch its skin. However, the sucker's body was still sent flying under the impact of the praying mantis's forelimbs. However, the moment it landed, the sucker's feet seemed to be equipped with springs. It suddenly jumped up and pounced at the praying mantis at an extremely fast speed. It hugged its right lower limb and threw it over its shoulder. Boom! The ground trembled, and the praying mantis's body also trembled. It was dizzy from the fall, and the ferocity in its eyes turned into confusion. "Sucker, remember to leave a bite for me." As he spoke, Feng-Chi took a few steps back to prevent himself from being affected by the battle. After all, he couldn't withstand the praying mantis's slash. His head might be cut off if he were to watch the battle nearby. Life was precious. It was worth 880,000. He couldn't afford to lose it. "Coward, shut up. If you're so good, then go ahead." Looking forward, after the sucker threw the praying mantis to the ground, it didn't give it a chance to resist. Its clenched little fist burst out with a jade-colored light. Then, it punched through the praying mantis's back. Suddenly, green blood splattered. The praying mantis seemed to realize that it had hit an iron plate. It hissed and began to struggle, try to escape. However, the sucker's second punch followed closely. The punch penetrated its chest and smashed a pit in the ground. Realizing that the praying mantis had no ability to resist anymore, he quickly stepped forward and shouted, "Sucker, stop! Suction cup, stop! Leave me with one last breath." The sucker ignored his shouts. The third punch aimed at the praying mantis's head and suddenly smashed down. Like a watermelon shattering, a mixture of white and green liquid splashed out in an instant. The praying mantis that was struggling with its limbs instantly stopped moving. He came to the side of the sucker and looked at the sucker that was already gnawing on the praying mantis's body. He felt helpless. "Leave a bite for me. Retreat about 300 meters away. I'll leave that yellow lump for you." Feng-Chi was speechless. As if noticing Feng-Chi's emotional fluctuations, the sucker that was gnawing suddenly raised its head and glanced at him. Then, it removed the praying mantis's forelimb, raised it above its head, and handed it to Feng-Chi. "You eat it." "I can't eat it," he said helplessly. The sucker held it up for a few seconds and found that Feng-Chi didn't take it. A look of confusion appeared on its face. Then it stretched out its mouth and took a big bite of the forelimb. It chewed and swallowed as a demonstration, as if to show him that this thing was non-toxic and edible. Listening to the crunching sound of chewing, he sincerely admired the sucker's teeth. At this time, the sucker swallowed the food in its mouth and raised its forelimb again, as if it wanted to share the delicious food with him. Feng-Chi was speechless. "Eat it. If you don't eat it, you're not giving the sucker face. Be careful of the weapon's betrayal. You talk too much. Eat it if you can." He couldn't help but roll his eyes. He suspected that this forelimb was as hard as steel. This thing could only be eaten by the sucker that inherited Mu Qing's ability. He really couldn't handle it. Seeing that Feng-Chi still didn't take the forelimb, the sucker didn't insist anymore and swallowed the huge forelimb in a few bites. Then, it pounced on the praying mantis's body and began to eat. As the sucker ate, the broken rune crystal on her left arm flashed, and the jade-like color on the surface of her body became more crystal clear. He didn't know why, but watching the sucker eat was very enjoyable. He really had the feeling that his weapon was gradually growing. Weapon is absorbing food energy. Strength +1, surface defense +1, durability +1, stamina +1, injury recovery +1. Working hard to become stronger. The narration jumped out at the right time to digitize Feng-Chi's déjà vu. In less than 5 minutes, the suction cup had swallowed the 2-meter-tall mantis domain creature, leaving only a rune crystal behind. Then, she stomped her feet and sucked on Feng-Chi's left arm. Weapon strengthening complete. Equipped thrower. Feng-Chi was speechless. Looking at the sucker's flat stomach, he had a new understanding of her terrifying digestive ability. In fact, he was always curious about one thing. What kind of rune domain creature did the rune crystal on Mu Qing's body come from? The ability that it came with was so terrifying. As long as she kept eating, her strength could almost be improved without limit. After entering Star City University, Mu Qing had entered a stage of rapid growth. Free food was the source of her strength. Other people needed to train hard to improve their strength, but Mu Qing only needed to work hard and then undergo adaptive training in the training room. It was not an exaggeration to say that this kind of growth method was cheating. However, the Star City database set the origin of Mu Qing's rune crystal as confidential information, so he couldn't find it. Perhaps even Mu Qing herself didn't know the origin of the rune crystal on her left arm. He continued on his way with the sucker. Along the way, he was attacked by 2 more domain creatures. However, in front of the terrifying power of the sucker, these domain creatures were like toys that couldn't even withstand a single blow. 1 punch to cripple, 1 punch to kill. This made it so that Feng Qi couldn't even find a chance to finish them off. While feeling helpless, he couldn't help but sigh at the power of the sucker. At this stage, other than Xiao He, he hadn't encountered any domain creatures stronger than the sucker in the nearby area. If it wasn't for Xiao Hei's bug-like immunity to all damage, perhaps even Xiao He wouldn't be a match for the sucker. Following the path in his memory, he didn't know how long he walked. Finally, he walked out of the abandoned city area with the sucker and stepped into the area filled with bones. This was undoubtedly his home ground. Placing the sucker on his chest, he began to punch the living dead and kick the undead worms. During this time, the sucker would open and close her eyes. Every time he entered battle mode, she would be activated. What he needed to do was to kill the living dead or the undead worms in front of him as soon as possible. Otherwise, the sucker's punch would steal his experience. Chapter 89. When he arrived at the burial area, Feng Qi did not go straight to the Star City Sanctuary. He decided to wait in this area for Xiao Hei's arrival. If he entered the underground sanctuary now, the situation would be the same as last time. The battle between Xiao Hei and the sucker would turn the entire underground sanctuary into a mess. He would not be able to focus on his studies, and even the database might be damaged by their battle. Waiting for Xiao Hei was to shift the battle outside the sanctuary. At the same time, he could also look for spiritual plants in this area to help the sucker recover, so that the battle would last longer. Hunting the living dead and the undead worms here could also help him improve his strength. If he hunted the territorial creatures in the abandoned city area, the sucker would not even leave him soup. During this time, he was worried that the sucker would eat the living dead after he killed them. As a human, he shuddered at the thought of the sucker eating the dead bodies. But the truth was that the sucker was not interested in these humanoid monsters at all. He felt that this was obviously related to Mu Qing's influence. After all, Mu Qing had never been hostile to humans. As for why Mu Qing massacred the city and killed the civilians, he felt that there must be a reason. He would work hard to find the truth. But for the undead worms, the sucker would not let them go. Every time he killed an undead worm, it would become food for the sucker to recover his strength. Ding! Ding! Found a purple plant at 8 o'clock. It's a good weapon. It can at least strengthen the sucker by +1. Hearing the voice, he immediately turned around and looked at the 8 o'clock direction. As he looked around, he quickly found a purple plant growing in the pile of bones. It was shaped like a lotus, with 8 slender stems extending from the center. At the top of the stems, there was a ladle-shaped fruit that looked like a gourd. It looked really strange. When he came in front of the plant, he did not pick the fruit. Instead, he uprooted the strange plant. He looked at the plant in his hand again and brought it to the sucker's mouth. Dry rice. Upon hearing these 2 words, the sleeping sucker opened its eyes by reflex. Then it opened its mouth and began to gnaw on the strange plant nearby, swallowing it down along with its roots. After a short wait, the suction cup's surface became sparkling and translucent, and its body temperature rose accordingly. Under his astonished gaze, one of the tiny cracks on the rune crystal on his left arm healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the rune crystal was still full of cracks, the healing effect this time was much better than when it had eaten the three-domain creatures. The jade-colored flowing light on the surface of the suction cup also bloomed brilliantly after the rune crystal repaired a small crack, but it soon returned to normal. He could feel that the suckers seemed to have become stronger. Thinking of this, he immediately asked, "Aside, what kind of spiritual plant is this? It's so effective." "I'm not sure. Based on its appearance, why don't we call it the 8 Calabash Brothers?" King saved Grandpa. Feng-Chi could not help but roll his eyes. "Your grandfather's body is very good. I can still fight 300 rounds with the demon. I don't need you to save me." Feng-Chi was speechless. In most cases, he felt that the narration was very reliable. In this dead world, the accompaniment of the narration also made him feel less depressed, but in exchange, he felt aggrieved. Sometimes, he wished that he could rush into the brain and fight 300 rounds with the narration until he was dead. While he gave the narration the middle finger in his heart, he continued to wander around the burial ground with the suction cup and began to search for new prey. During this period, the narration prompted him several times, allowing him to find 4 spiritual plants in this area. One of the spiritual plants was even buried 1 meter underground, but it still couldn't escape the narration's powerful detection and perception. After a few hours, Xiaohei's figure still didn't appear. Therefore, he decided to focus on hunting the living dead and the undead worms. After tearing another 3-meter-long undead worm in half, he handed the slime-stained undead worm to the suction cup. Dry rice. Upon hearing the sound, the suction cup suddenly opened its eyes, then pounced on the undead worm and began to bite and eat. But after 2 mouthfuls, the suction cup suddenly began to retch, and then spat out a black substance. Feng-Chi was speechless. Seeing this scene, he was a little confused. He didn't know why the suction cup, who had always had a good appetite, would vomit. Don't panic. The suction cup is just spitting out substances that the body can't absorb. After understanding the reason, he was no longer worried. But the suction cup's next strange behavior stunned him. She hadn't spat out all the substances in her body that she couldn't absorb, but she hurriedly opened her mouth to continue eating, resulting in a shocking scene of vomiting and eating at the same time. Feng-Chi was dumbfounded. This glutton attribute is really in the same vein as Mu-Qing. Just like your optimistic personality, it's also in the same vein as mine. Can't you be more polite? Will you die if you don't scold me? It's worse than death. Feng-Chi was speechless. As she ate and vomited, the suction cup finally finished vomiting the black liquid in her body and ate an entire undead worm. As the jade-colored crystal flowed on the surface of her body, the dirt on her body slid off. From being dirty, she changed back to being cute and adorable. Listen to my call. Merge with me. Powerful suction weapon. Accompanied by the Chinibu's shout, the suction cup leaped up and sucked on his chest. While giving the narrator the middle finger in his heart, he cast his gaze into the distance and began to search for new hunting targets. He wandered around the burial ground and continued to hunt. After an unknown period of time, he felt obvious changes in his body. A ball of qi and blood emerged from his head and quickly covered his entire body. Under the scouring of this ball of qi and blood, the color of the originally gray bones changed. When this ball of blood mist dissipated, the originally gray bones became white, as if they were plated with a layer of color. His whole person looked much cleaner. At the same time, he could clearly feel that his strength had increased significantly. Summoning the attribute panel, he found that his prefix title had indeed changed. Blood Source Nightmare Toughness, Level 4. Very Strong Living Dead. Feng-Chi, Strength Level. Dark Iron, Lower Level. Prefix Title, Very Strong. Physical strength increases by 30%, greatly enhances self-recovery ability. Toughness Level 4. Muscle toughness increases by 4%. Nightmare, unupgradable prefix title, can invade the consciousness and read the contents of the target's memory. The specific effect depends on the user's mental strength. The ability of the prefix title can be increased as the user's mental strength increases. Blood source. Unupgradable prefix title condenses a blood core in the heart, greatly increasing the heart's efficiency. This ability can be released on its own, instantly draining the blood core's energy to strengthen the user, explosively increasing the user's fighting strength. This ability can be increased as the user's mental strength increases. Bloodline. Human, primary, bloodline evolution points. 3781000 prefix title milestone frowny face very strong, upgradable. Third milestone progress. 0%, toughness level 4, upgradable 8%, so perfunctory, I thought that very strong would become another title. After looking at the attribute panel, he could not help but ridicule. That's right, isn't it better to change it to very strong? It makes the person who created this attribute panel seem uncultured. Who created it? He quickly asked. How would I know? Since he could not get an answer, he did not ask anymore and continued to search for prey. He did not want to let go of any chance to increase his strength. Before, he had no choice but to be killed by Xiaohei before he could finish his task. Now that he had time, he would not waste it. After all, increasing his strength was also very important. Not only could he protect himself, but he could also form a team to search for resources in the domain in the future. In Feng Qi's first battle after upgrading robust to very robust, his opponent was a living dead that emitted a foul stench. He also began to test how much his strength had increased. However, the results of the test shocked him. This time, he only used one punch to send the undead flying 3 meters away. His strength had more than doubled. It was the same in other aspects. The hardness of his bones, the explosive power of his muscles, and so on had all received a significant increase. Thinking about how the strengthening in the future dream could be reflected in reality, he could not help but feel happy. At this time, the voice of the narrator appeared in his mind, frowny face, very significant increase. You can now last 0.1 seconds against Xiaohei. Applause. He was still happy about the increase in his strength, but his smile instantly froze. When it came to improving his mentality, the narrator would never let him down. What do you mean by improving your mentality? I'm just encouraging you. If I don't whip you twice, you'll be laughing so hard that the corners of your mouth will almost reach your ears. I'm going to have nightmares tonight. Feng Qi was speechless. Ignoring the narrator, he continued to hunt the undead nearby. However, compared to before, the percentage of milestone advancement from hunting the undead was pitifully low. The advancement had become more difficult. In contrast, the increase in toughness in the title prefix did not change at all. Whether it was level 1 or level 4, the percentage of milestone obtained from hunting the undead worm was the same. He was very curious about this, so he asked, Narrator, do you know why? Before completing a major advancement, toughness is the lowest level of talent ability. It can't be compared to your own talent ability at all. Every advancement of your talent is equivalent to a major advancement, so the corresponding requirement of vitality consumption will naturally be higher. After listening to the narrator's explanation, he was enlightened. One was the improvement of life essence, and the other was the advancement of a single ability. They were not the same concept at all. After understanding the reason, he continued to wander around the burial area and began to search for new prey. After a few hours, he upgraded toughness to level 5 while hunting. The percentage of very strong milestone reached 16%. At this moment, the narrator's voice sounded in his mind, frowny face ahem. Young man, pay attention to the situation. Prepare to throw a one-time consumable weapon. When he heard the narrator's reminder, he immediately turned his head to the east. At this moment, Xiaohei was quickly floating over from afar. The black fog around him spread and contracted as if breathing. Looking at the suction cup lying on his chest, a hint of guilt appeared on his face. I'll avenge you the next time I come back. Help me hold it off for a while. Next time, next time, next time. Your nature seems to have awakened a little. It seems like Granny Meng's soup is almost unable to seal your memory. Feng Qi was speechless. When he realized that the narrator was beating around the bush to say that he was some kind of animal, he spat in his heart. However, at this moment, Xiao He was already close to him. He reached out and picked up the suction cup lying on his chest. While she was confused, he threw it to Xiao He. "I'll definitely do it next time." Chapter 90. Feng Qi turned around and looked at the sucker that was fighting Xiao He. Without looking back, he headed toward the Star City Sanctuary. He didn't know how long the partially healed sucker could stall Xiao He, so he had to seize every second that the sucker could buy for him. He had to use all of his time on the knife's edge. He couldn't let the sucker's sacrifice be in vain. Hite, Feng Qi. After running for about 10 minutes, he arrived at the entrance of the underground sanctuary and walked in. He walked down the straight metal tunnel for a while before a huge underground plaza appeared in front of him. The big screen in the center of the plaza was still on, and the lights on the control panel flickered. It was still running. He walked in front of the control panel and looked at the screen in front of him. The screen showed Mo Fei's email message. Because there was a lot of content, last time he read the photo that Mo Fei took of the sucker and Vivian, he left early because of Xiao He's arrival. Now he decided to continue reading the email messages and look for important clues that might exist in the follow-up messages. As for the meaningless details in the messages, he chose to skip them. Mo Fei's message, sudden effect. "Didn't you tell me you have a special ability to read other people's memories? What's it called? I think it's nightmare, right? I don't think you're using this ability well. Here's what I think. Every time you transmigrate to the future, you can only understand what happened at that time and what your future self will experience through the mail. The information you can get is obviously incomplete, and there's a possibility that you will miss out on a lot of important information. More importantly, there are many hidden dangers in this form of message. The email you use is a darknet email that is not your real name. The email address is changed every 6 months with the last 4 digits of your ID. It seems like no one other than you and me can find this email address, but in reality, there's a very small chance that it will be exposed. For example, if you enter the future dream and your original timeline is controlled, then your secret will be completely exposed. At that time, your email will become a tool for evil forces to mislead you, and the impact will be extremely terrifying. If the nightmare's ability is as powerful as you say, then this problem can actually be solved from the root. Next, let's talk about a solution I came up with. This idea comes from the illusion of brain in a vat. The specific principle is to remove your brain after you die and place it in a nutrient solution to maintain its vitality. This way, when you transmigrate to the future 1,500 years later, you can use the nightmare ability to read your own memories. It's equivalent to re-experiencing what you experienced in the future. This way, whether you are controlled in the future or if you made a mistake, you will be able to see it clearly. Seeing this, Feng Qi could not help but be stunned. Your brother is too wild. This is really a F***king genius idea. By keeping your brain, you can directly read your future memories and see your own experiences at a glance. This is much more brilliant than going through your mailbox. Won't I be too miserable in the future if I do this? I'd rather die than live. In the future, every time you enter the future dreamland, you just have to kowtow to your future self a few times to apologize. It's not a big problem. Your future self will forgive you. Feng Qi was speechless. Continuing to read the contents of his mailbox, Mo Fei began to explain the feasibility of this method. As long as your nightmare ability is as powerful as you say, the plan is definitely feasible. However, it won't be easy to carry out. If we can't solve 2 key problems, the brain in a vat plan can't be carried out. The first problem is after removing your brain, how do you maintain its vitality for 1,500 years? At the same time, you'll need a sophisticated instrument to store your brain and ensure that it won't be affected by external factors such as earthquakes and other natural disasters. I think you can only find the answer to this problem in the future database. The current technology definitely can't meet this requirement. If you can bring back detailed information, I can help you create a medicine to maintain your brain's vitality and a sophisticated storage instrument. The second problem is, how do you bring this sophisticated instrument into the Star City Underground shelter so that you can find this instrument 1,500 years in the future? After all, We were already dead when we built this Star City underground shelter. It won't be easy to solve this problem. You'll need a trustworthy successor to help you complete this task. The successor can also help you obtain the authorization account you mentioned. If you can solve these two problems, then it'll be simple. You can travel 1,500 years in the future and head directly to the Star City underground shelter. You can find a sophisticated instrument that stores your brain in the iron door you mentioned. Then, use your nightmare ability to read the memories in your brain. Everything that your future self experiences will be revealed to you. Even if you're controlled by evil forces in the future, you don't have to worry. You can even understand what kind of existence the evil forces are through you being controlled. This is because they won't guard against you at all and will think that you're completely under their control. Of course, this idea is also for the sake of insurance. In fact, the probability of your mailbox being exposed is very small. Everything is up to you to decide. If you obtain the unlimited memory ability that you speak of, remember to bring me back information on the growth of technology. Flesh and blood, machinery, and cultivation might not be the best way out. The growth potential of technology isn't weak either. Mechs, warp drive, spaceships, automated production machinery armies, and so on. You bunch of cultivation dogs will never understand. Machinery is the romance of a real man. Seeing Mo Fei's final retort, Feng Qi looked helpless. He was already so old, but Mo Fei was still like an old child. He still firmly believed that technology was the future. Aside, which one do you think is stronger when a pure technology civilization or a pure cultivation civilization collides? How would I know? There are many people who support the technology system and the cultivation system, but no one can convince the other. After all, humans have not reached the peak of these two systems. The structure of the future system is all based on imagination. The technology party will propose dual-directional foil, wormhole warp transmission technology, and so on. The cultivation party will propose abilities such as the law of words, immortality, and so on. In the end, no one has seen the end of the growth system. When comparing, it is completely dependent on imagination to decide the winner. However, the future conjectures of the two growth systems have similarities. For example, they can both travel through the river of time and achieve immortality. The only difference is that one is mechanical immortality while the other is physical immortality. However, there are both ways to achieve immortality. There's also the ability to travel through space and so on. If a debate were to break out, imagination would determine the upper limit. For example, if a technological civilization were to throw a two-directional foil at a cultivation civilization, the cultivation civilization would create a new world with the singularity. If anyone thinks that I'm wrong, why don't you bring out the F***king evidence? It is the same in the opposite direction. The technology party can also give many examples of techniques that can restrain the cultivation system. For example, causal weapons can ignore the flow of time and interfere with events in the timeline. They can kill the cultivator before they are born. Feng Qi was speechless. After listening to the narrator's explanation, he understood one thing. Before the strength of the two systems reached the peak, no one knew what the end point was. Naturally, there was no way to compare. If there was a comparison, it would be a comparison of whose imagination was richer. He no longer thought about which system was stronger. After all, there was no comparison. However, at this stage, he still decided to focus on the development of the cultivation system. The development of technology required the accumulation of a lot of knowledge. A seemingly simple technology might have a huge amount of knowledge behind it. Before he obtained the ability to have unlimited memory, if he wanted to develop technology, he would be going against his own brain cells. He could not even remember the code of Savior, let alone other complicated technological knowledge. In comparison, it was much easier to memorize the knowledge of the cultivation system. It was not that the cultivation system was not complicated. In terms of complexity, it was no less complicated than the technology system. However, the complexity of the cultivation system was decreasing. The most difficult step in the research and development of a cultivation technique was always the creation stage. During this time, the exploration of the human body would require countless failures. Even after the research of the technique was completed, a series of safety tests had to be done. The human body was made up of about 50 trillion cells. Each cell was a complete individual. They combined to form the human body. The complexity of the human body was far more complicated than any existing precision technology. The growth of cultivation was developed with the exploration and development of the human body as the core. Therefore, the creation stage was the most difficult. After that, it became easier and easier. In the hands of a learner, they only needed to follow the steps that were designed. It was like a created instrument. The user only needed to press the switch to use it. However, it was undeniable that the process of creating this instrument was very complicated. What Feng-Chi was doing now was transferring the operation steps of the cultivation technique. The process was not complicated. As for the testing and modification steps before the release of the technique, they had already been completed. There was no need for him to worry. Copying homework was always faster than answering questions seriously. Moreover, the difficulty of creating a technique was decreasing. What he needed was the answer. As for the solution in front of the equal sign, he did not need to understand it at all. If he wanted to develop technology, the situation would be completely different. The answer was not important. What was important was the way to solve the problem and the steps. The difficulty of copying was completely different between the two models. One was the answer behind the equal sign. The other was copying everything in front of the equal sign. This was also the main reason why Feng-Chi did not choose to develop technology for the time being. The process of recording technological knowledge was too mentally taxing. Before he obtained the infinite memory technique, he did not have any ideas. Otherwise, he would be looking for trouble. After closing Mo Fei's email, he looked at the iron doors around the underground plaza. Before he decided to record the technique, he wanted to open a few more iron doors. While looking for Mu Qing's body, he might find something new. Oh, is it time to open the blind box again? Last time, your harvest was a tadpole killer. Guess what you'll get this time? He could not help but roll his eyes as he said, I'll get a godly weapon. When I'm strong enough, I'll grab you out of your body and use this godly weapon to flick your head 1,000 times. Aside,